Chapter 990. In the drunken fragrance inn of the Sunrise Royal City, the wind and snow were raging. The only descendant of the royal bloodline of the Sunrise Royal family was assassinated. The battle was white-hot, and the entire Wind Moon Inn was destroyed. Ning Chen and Yu Yao teamed up to fight the twins, who were rare in the world. Both of them were half a step into the mortal realm, and their special martial arts made them fall into a bitter battle. Bi Yun was unsheathed, and his blade was threatening. However, Dong Yu's slender hands were as indestructible as divine weapons. She was not at a disadvantage when facing Bi Yun's divine sword with her flesh and blood. On the other side, Ning Chen also dared not to be careless when facing Xia Ji, one of the twin assassins. He had never seen such a strange martial art and combat method, so he had to be careful. The two top young experts under the mortal realm were in a dilemma at the same time. Facing the two twin assassins whose identities were unknown, it was difficult for them to gain the upper hand for a while. In the imperial palace of the Sunrise Royal Palace, thousands of rays of light gathered in the imperial palace. King Sunrise's figure appeared. He looked in the direction of the drunken fragrance inn in the distance, and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. The king raised his hand, and a vast and powerful palm energy surged. At this moment, above the royal city, a giant hand fell from the sky and slapped at the imperial palace with a loud bang. The two equally matched forces collided in the sky. In the earth-shaking vibration, the two palm energies spread out, and the aftermath roared in all directions. In the imperial palace, King Sunrise looked at the sky with a solemn expression. A king had intervened. "Go and help the young master," King Sunrise said with a solemn expression. "Yes." Outside the imperial palace, the royal guards respectfully accepted the order. After a moment, they disappeared and hurried in the direction of the drunken fragrance inn. In the imperial palace, King Shuri looked up at the sky, and his vigorous vital essence was constantly activated. In the dazzling golden light, an abnormal phenomenon appeared in the sky above the palace. In the golden divine flame, a three-legged golden crow appeared, and the supreme divine flame soared into the sky. In the sky, dark clouds stirred, and thunder roared. The king-level power fell from the sky again, and the wind and thunder blasted at the three-legged golden crow below. The two kings' power collided again, and the universe shook. In the royal city, strange light rose, and runes circled, blocking the spreading aftermath of the battle. As the kings fought, the world shook. Countless people in the Sunrise Royal City looked over in shock. In the drunken fragrance inn, the two kings, who were in a bitter battle, felt the terrifying vibration in the direction of the royal palace. Imperial Father. Ness Yao's heart sank slightly. There was actually a king-level expert who had made a move. It seemed like this assassination attempt had been planned for a very long time. "Brother Ning, be careful. We might really be in trouble." Thinking up to this point, Ness Yao swung his sword, swept his gaze across the battlefield not far away, and reminded. "Understood," Ning Chen replied. He dodged the slender hand that came at him like a venomous snake. His palm congealed wind and snow as he forcefully counterattacked. The hand of the star plucking opened and closed. The peerless foundation condensed the wind and clouds. The power of the star plucking was shockingly majestic as it attacked the woman in front of him. As the killing move approached, Summer Solstice did not panic at all. A strange light rose from her delicate hands, and her whole body shone brilliantly as she faced the palm of picking stars. Extreme moves collided, and in an instant, heaven and earth were turned upside down. The aftershocks attacked their bodies, and both of them were forced back 10 steps at the same time before they stabilized themselves. With a flip of his palm, Ning Chen suppressed the surging energy in his body. He looked at the woman in front of him, and a strange look flashed past his eyes. This woman was not much weaker than the 4th-level expert he faced earlier. She had sent out 2 4th-level experts to assassinate the Sunrise Royal bloodline, and even had a king-level expert obstruct the Lord of Sunrise Royal City. If he had not appeared here by accident, Ness Yao would most likely have met with disaster this time. It seemed like the 100 clans were not as united as they seemed. "Young Lord Ness Yao." Ning Chen's gaze swept across the battlefield not far away and said, "How about we talk about something? Speak your mind." Ness Yao said seriously, "That Miss Jean you sent away, you just have to return her freedom. However, I want these two ladies in front of you." Ning Chen said calmly. Hearing this, Ness Yao's eyes flashed with brilliance. This Mr. Ning sure had a huge appetite. These two twins whose strength was comparable to the red dust realm, their future potential was unimaginable. As long as such geniuses could be taken in for his own use, they would definitely be of great use in the future. Shameless bastard! After hearing this, winter rain and summer solstice's killing intent grew even stronger. As they attacked, thunder rumbled and waves surged. Ness Yao swung his sword and slashed apart a layer of cold rain. His gaze grew even more serious, and he replied, "Even if Brother Ning likes them, this young lord will not take what you like. These two ladies will be at Brother Ning's disposal." Then, "Thank you, young lord." After receiving his promise, Ning Chen responded. He opened his hands, and the energy of yin and yang soared into the sky. Mystic Art, Sun and Moon Ascension. The jet-black mystic art reappeared. In an instant, a black moon and a white sun rose into the sky at the same time. The chaotic energy constantly surged, and the yin and yang were stirred. The sky and earth changed color. It was a world-shocking move, and its pressure was strong. Winter rain and summer solstice's expressions turned serious at the same time. Their figures intertwined, and they combined their moves to block the sun and moon. With a loud rumble, the two extremes of yin and yang clashed against each other. The two women retreated a few steps, and a trace of blood flowed down from the corners of their mouths, dyeing it red for the first time. Not far away, Ness Yao's figure arrived. Looking at the two injured women in front of him, he said, "It seems like Brother Ning's attitude immediately changed after hearing that he could obtain these two beauties. Young lord, you're making fun of me. If I want to receive my reward, I have to put in some effort." Ning Chen waved his hand to disperse the dust in front of him and replied. Ness Yao nodded, his expression did not relax. Looking forward, he continued. "Brother Ning, have you ever worked together with a swordsman before?" "Too many to count." Ning Chen replied honestly. "Then that's good. Brother Ning's foundation is extraordinary. Next, I'll have to trouble Brother Ning to hold back these two ladies." Ness Yao said solemnly, "Sure." Ning Chen did not decline, and replied. After the division of labor was completed, the Beyond Cloud divine sword in Ness Yao's hands surged into the sky. A golden divine sun soared into the sky, and within the divine sun, a three-legged golden crow flapped its wings. Divine flames scattered down, filling the entire battlefield. Summer solstice, be careful. On the other side, winter rain reminded her with a solemn voice. Wind and frost condensed in her slender hands, and endless cold energy surged, blocking layer after layer of golden divine flames. Mystic Art, Waxing Moons. The battle began once again, and the situation escalated to another level. Ning Chen raised both of his hands, and his mystic art shocked the world. In the entire battlefield, the power of laws crazily swirled, and a black moon materialized. From round to incomplete, it evolved into the true form of heaven and earth. No words could be spoken, and no words could be spoken. With the addition of the mystic art, the two ladies instantly felt an intense tearing sensation coming from their bodies. Without any warning, they were unable to avoid it. A pool of blood splashed out, dyeing their clothes red. Winter rain and summer solstice both vomited blood. Facing a martial art that they had never seen before, they were once again injured. In an instant, the three-legged golden crow flapped its wings from the golden divine sun and swept out at an extremely fast speed. Its speed was shocking. At the same time, Ness Yao's figure moved as well, and his mystic art moved as well. He was so fast that no one could react in time. A sword pierced through her body, and fresh blood gushed out. As she was the one who was injured, Summer Solstice did not have the time to dodge. The tip of the sword entered her body, and blood sprinkled down like rain. Summer Solstice. Winter Rain's expression shook, and she said, Don't be anxious. You two are people that Brother Ning wants to take down. This young lord will not be ungrateful and kill you. Ness Yao pulled out his sword, and his figure swept out. He swung his sword to shake off the blood on the sword, and said indifferently. The situation of the battle tilted so quickly. Summer Solstice's figure retreated a few steps, holding her injured right chest. She coughed violently, and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. She was heavily injured. Winter Rain rushed over to support the heavily injured Summer Solstice, and her face was filled with anxiety. Winter Rain, leave quickly. Summer Solstice pushed the woman beside her away, and shouted while supporting her heavily injured body. Just as the situation of the battle changed, the battle between the two kings in King Sunrise's palace had reached a white-hot level. The rumbling shook, and the wind and clouds stirred. It was so terrifying that the common people trembled and could not get up. In front of the throne, King Sunrise sensed the changes in the battle situation in the distance. A cold smile appeared on his dignified face, and he said, "God bless Sunrise's royal bloodline. Your plan has failed." In the sky, in the stirred thunderclouds, an illusory figure stood, looking at the battle in the distance. A hint of gloominess flashed through his eyes. No matter how many plans there were, it was better to go up to the heavens. Who was that unfamiliar young expert? He had never seen him before. Retreat. With an order, tens of thousands of thunderbolts descended from the thunderclouds and blasted toward the battle in the distance. In King Sunrise's palace, King Sunrise sneered. He stepped out into the void, raised his palm, and blocked the thunderbolts from descending from the sky. These two women are your apology to Sunrise City. I won't see you off. King Sunrise waved his hand to disperse the aftermath between heaven and earth, and said lightly. In the sky, in the thunderclouds, the illusory figure looked down and said in a deep voice, "King Sunrise, I will remember today's grievances. There will be plenty of time in the future. Next time, you won't be so lucky." As soon as he finished speaking, the wind and clouds in the sky were turbulent. In the blink of an eye, the wind stopped and the clouds dispersed, and the figure of the king also disappeared. After the king left, in the battle in the distance, Summer Solstice showed a determined look. With a deep shout, her genuine vitality rushed to the sky, and her hair was broken. Her black hair danced wildly in the wind. Winter Rain, let's go. Chapter 991. Rising Sun Royal City. After a great battle, the entire intoxicated fragrance inn was destroyed, and the surrounding areas were plundered. The royal guards were quickly dispatched, and the royal city was under martial law, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. In a manor not far from Rising Sun Royal Palace, a medicinal fragrance assailed the nostrils. Silhouettes in plain clothes would occasionally pass by, preparing medicinal herbs for treatment. On the bed, a beautiful woman had her eyes tightly shut. Her face was pale, and she looked extremely weak. On the table beside the bed, a fire was dancing, and medicinal fragrance continuously spread out from the medicinal pot. Outside the room, Ningchen walked in. Glancing at the woman on the bed who still had not woken up, he opened the medicinal pot, and placed the spiritual herbs he prepared one by one into the pot. Gradually, within the room, an even thicker medicinal fragrance spread out, refreshing one's heart. An hour later, Ningchen picked up the medicinal pot from the fire, and poured the brewed medicine into a bowl. Looking at the little divine medicine on his shoulder, he revealed a smile. "Little gourd, help me out." "Just one drop." The little gourd reached out a white and tender finger and bargained. "All right." Ningchen chuckled, and placed the bowl of medicine in front of the little boy. The little gourd closed its eyes, and with a pained expression, bit its finger, and squeezed out a drop of blood into the bowl. Immediately after, it retracted its finger, and placed it into its mouth, afraid that even half a drop of blood would flow out. Ningchen smiled, and patted the little boy's head and said, "Thank you. Immortal Elder, you promised to give me divine jades." The little gourd said with an aggrieved expression. I almost forgot." Ningchen flipped his hand, and a small divine jade appeared. Immediately after, he placed it in front of the little boy, and said with a light smile, Eat it sparingly, this thing is expensive. The little gourd nodded vigorously and reached out to receive the divine jade. Placing it into its mouth, it began to happily chew on it as though it was a snack. Ningchen carried the medicine to the bed and sat down. He carefully helped the woman up, and then he used a spoon to slowly feed the medicine into the woman's mouth. "Brother Ning, is your little beauty still not awake?" At this moment, a familiar voice sounded from outside the room. Without waiting for the manor's owner to speak, Ness Yao dressed in blue robes walked in. Holding an ancient sword, he looked extraordinarily handsome. Beside the bed, Ningchen turned around and looked at the young lord of the royal city who was walking over. He smiled and said, "Young lord, are you so free?" "Not really, but with such an important person like Brother Ning here, other things can be temporarily postponed." Ness Yao stepped forward and said with a light smile, "Young lord thinks too highly of me." After feeding her the medicine, Ningchen stood up and placed the bowl on the table. He said, "You don't come here for no reason. Young master, you're not really here just to chat, are you?" Yu Yao lightly smiled and said, "Brother Ning is still so direct, then this young patriarch shall not beat around the bush. My royal father wishes to meet you. When Brother Ning has the time, can you accompany me to meet my royal father, King Shuri?" Hearing this, a strange light flashed across Ningchen's eyes, and he said, "Young lord, you must be joking. King Shuri is very busy every day. How can he have time to see a commoner like me? Brother Ning is too modest." Yu Yao's expression became serious, and he said, "Brother Ning has done a great favor for my Shuri royal bloodline. My royal father wishes to meet you just to thank Brother Ning for your kindness back then. I hope Brother Ning will not refuse." Ningchen looked at the person in front of him. After a long while, he nodded lightly and said with a smile, "I will remember King Shuri's invitation. When Miss Xiaji's injuries are better, I will accompany you to meet King Shuri." "That's great." Yu Yao nodded and looked at the unconscious woman on the bed and said, "How are her injuries?" "There are healing medicines in the palace. Why don't you bring Miss Xiaji to the palace to recuperate?" "Young lord, I appreciate your kindness." Ningchen shook his head and said, "Miss Xiaji's injuries are gradually stabilizing, so there's no need to trouble you. Furthermore, Miss Xiaji still has quite a bit of hostility towards you, so it's not suitable to bring her to the palace." Yu Yao thought for a moment, and then nodded lightly and said, "Let's do as Brother Ning says. However, Brother Ning, you have to be careful too. This Miss Xiaji's strength is astonishing, so you have to be careful." "Thank you for your reminder, young lord. I will be careful," Ningchen lightly replied. "Then I'm relieved. I still have matters to attend to in the palace, so it's not convenient for me to stay any longer. I shall take my leave first." Yu Yao cupped his fists and bid farewell. "Have a safe journey, young lord," Ningchen softly said. Yu Yao nodded, and without saying anything else, he turned and left. Ningchen watched the former leave. After a long while, he turned to look at the woman on the bed and said, "Miss Xiaji, there's no need to pretend. I know you're already awake." On the bed, Xiaji's body trembled. A moment later, she regained her calmness, opened her eyes, and looked at the plain-clothed young man beside her. With an ice-cold expression, she said, "How did you know I'm already awake? Earlier, when Yu Yao was about to leave, you unconsciously released your killing intent. It seems like your hostility towards the young lord of Shuri Royal City is not small. Can you tell me why?" Ningchen walked forward and said with a smile, "It's none of your business." Xiaji turned her head away, no longer looking at the former, and coldly said, "Miss, you have a backbone." Ningchen smiled and said, "However, I'm the one who saved your life, shouldn't you have some gratitude in your heart?" When Xiaji heard this, she could not help but turn her head back. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she looked at the person in front of her and said, "If it wasn't for you, the young lord of Shuri City would have already died in our hands. Shuri Royal City has done many evil deeds, and you're helping the tyrant. You won't have a good ending. I'm not sure what kind of things Shuri Royal City has done that would incur the wrath of the heavens and the people. I only know that I took you from Shuri Royal City's young lord first, so at least you wouldn't have to suffer some unnecessary torture. So, when he said this, Ning Chen sized up the woman on the bed and said with a strange smile, "Miss, shouldn't you be grateful as well, and think of a way to repay your benefactor who saved your life? Don't even think about it." Looking at the former's gaze, Shiji felt her entire body turn cold. She placed her hands in front of her body and said with a furious expression, "Ha." Seeing the woman's intense reaction, Ning Chen laughed and looked away. With a calm expression, he said, "Don't be nervous, I didn't have any ulterior motives when I saved you. Although I stopped you from killing the young lord of Shuri Royal City, I don't want you to lose your lives because of this. Recuperate well here. With me here, at least this place is safe." With that, Ning Chen walked to the table, tidied up the medicine jar and the fire in the furnace, and then walked out of the room. On the bed, Shiji watched the former's back as he left. Her eyes were slightly dazed, and she could not regain her senses for a moment. Outside the room, a beautiful woman dressed in a red veil stood quietly. When she saw the figure walking out, she smiled and said, "Master." "Miss Jean, you're already free. Why are you still staying here? Do whatever you need to do, and don't let your imagination run wild." Ning Chen looked at the woman in front of him and said, "Hong Jin is willing to serve by Master's side for the rest of my life. I hope that Master can grant me my wish." Hong Jin knelt on the ground and said with a sincere expression. Ning Chen stopped in his tracks and said with a slight frown, "Miss Jean, did you not understand what I said? You're really free now. You don't have to test me anymore. You can't find out my identity, so staying here is pointless." He knew himself well. Hong Jin had only met him once, and her reason for being so insistent on staying was very clear. It seemed like the promise that Shuri Royal City gave Hong Jin was that she would only be set free after completing the mission. That was why she was so insistent. Hong Jin's expression shook when she heard this. He actually knew everything. "Since that young lord of yours has already said that he will set you free, then don't let your imagination run wild. I don't know why you're so afraid of Shuri Royal City, but they won't go as far as to make things difficult for a lady like you. At the very least, I still have some value to them now. They won't simply touch you and make me unhappy. Do you understand?" Ning Chen immediately made his intentions clear and said sternly. Hong Jin fell silent after hearing the former's words. After a long while, she bowed respectfully and said, "Thank you, young Master Ning. The further you go, the better. Don't ever come back. The world is so big, there's bound to be a place for a lady like you." Ning Chen revealed a calm smile and said. Hong Jin nodded. She looked at the young man in front of her, as though she wanted to remember the latter in her heart forever. Ning Chen smiled and did not say anything else. Holding the medicinal pot and the furnace fire, he walked forward. Hong Jin turned around and walked towards the other side. The two people who were walking away did not say anything else. Perhaps this was fate that was bound by fate. From now on, they would each take care of themselves. In the room, Shiji saw this scene with her own eyes and remained silent. From the words he said to that lady earlier, she could tell that he did not have much of a bias towards Shuri Royal City. Could it be that he really appeared there by coincidence, and that was why he intervened earlier? Not long after, Ning Chen came back with a bowl of hot water in his hand. He sat by the bed and handed the water to the lady. He smiled and said, "If you can get up and drink by yourself, you don't need me to feed you. I've never been good at serving people." On the bed, Shiji forced herself to sit up. She silently took the water and sipped it. "Do you want more?" Seeing that the water in the bowl had been finished, Ning Chen took the bowl and asked. Shiji shook her head and did not say anything. Ning Chen got up, walked to the table and put the bowl down. He turned around to look at the lady who was half lying on the bed and said, "Miss Shiji, you are not ordinary people. You should know very well why you became assassins. You assassinated the royal bloodline of Shuri. Even with the protection of that king, the chances of you leaving Shuri Royal City alive are very slim." Shiji continued to remain silent. She did not say a word and refused to say anything. Ning Chen did not force her. He sat quietly at the table, took out a scroll, and wiped it carefully as usual. The scroll was yellowed, and the traces of time were obvious. However, the scroll was well preserved, without any damage or wrinkles. It could be seen that the owner cherished it very much. When the scroll was opened, a lady as beautiful as a flower came into view. Just like before, she was in the prime of her life, and her beauty shocked the world. 1,000 years was too long. He was worried that he would gradually forget her face. Therefore, he would take it out to look at it every once in a while. Ning Chen's gentle gaze was no longer as fierce as before. A smile appeared on his face, as if he was recalling something from a long time ago. A glimpse of her beauty was breathtaking. Xia Ji's gaze inadvertently fell on the person in the scroll. A strange look flashed across her eyes. What a beautiful lady! Who is she to you? Xia Ji could not help but ask. Wife. Ning Chen raised his head and replied with a smile. Chapter 992. Sunrise Palace. Inside the royal palace, there were thousands of rays of light. An illusory figure stood in front of the throne. His body was surrounded by mist, making it difficult to distinguish his true appearance. King Sunrise was a world-renowned expert. Even in the primitive devil realm where experts were numerous, no one dared to offend him. In the royal palace, a man in black half knelt on the ground and reported respectfully. Have you found anything? In front of the throne, King Sunrise asked. My king, there is no news. This person seems to have appeared out of thin air. No one knows him. The man in black replied. Oh. In the rays of light, King Sunrise said, even you can't find any clues. This person's identity is even more suspicious. My king, this person saved the young lord's life. We can use this as an excuse to invite him to the royal palace. With my king's cultivation, you should be able to find some clues. The man in black suggested. I have already asked Yu Yao to invite him. However, this person used the excuse that Miss Xia Ji needs someone to take care of her and temporarily delayed his arrival. King Sunrise said lightly. The man in black narrowed his eyes and said, it seems that this person is very cautious and vigilant. King Sunrise nodded and said calmly, no hurry. As long as he doesn't leave the royal palace, continue to monitor him under my control. If there is any movement, immediately report back. The man in black respectfully accepted the order, and then his figure faded and disappeared. The secret guard left. In front of the throne, the rays of light dissipated, and the figure of the king disappeared without a trace. In the western courtyard of the royal palace, Yu Yao sat in front of the stone table in the courtyard, gently wiping the ancient sword in his hand. He looked meticulous and abnormally focused. In the courtyard, none of the maids came forward to disturb him. The young lord was a person who cherished his sword very much. At this time, if anyone went forward to disturb him, they would definitely make the young lord unhappy. Although the young lord would not get angry easily, it was still very scary when he got angry. Fairy Cloud Ancient Sword, one of the legendary divine weapons of Sunrise Royal City. It was said that it had been stained with the blood of the emperors of the 100 races and had extraordinary spirituality. Even among the divine weapons of the 100 races, it could be ranked in the top 10. Right at this moment, in the skies above the western courtyard, dense mist gathered. A figure whose entire body was enveloped in multicolored light walked out. Looking at the figure in the courtyard, he calmly said, Yu Yao, if you have the time, go invite that Mr. Ning over again. In front of the stone table, Ness Yao regained his senses. He carefully placed down the ancient sword in his hands and looked towards the sky. He calmly said, Royal Father, for you to be in such a hurry to invite that Mr. Ning over, is there something important? In the void, King Shuri quietly looked at his legitimate son below. After a while, he said indifferently, What? Do you have any doubts about my decision? I don't dare to question you, but father is too impatient, so I can't help but be suspicious, Su Yang said calmly. Hearing this, King Shuri narrowed his eyes and said, I invited him here just to thank him in person. He saved your life, so I won't do anything to him. Yu Yao revealed a smile on his face and said, This son understands. If I have the time, I will invite him again. However, This sun cannot guarantee whether or not Mr. Ning will come. Just do your best. In the void, King Shuri responded. After that, he didn't say anything more. The sky full of multicolored light dissipated, and the figure of the king also disappeared. In the courtyard, the four maids, Mei, Lan, Zhu, and Ju, all looked worried when they heard the conversation between their young master and King Shuri. They could tell that the conversation between the two didn't seem to be so pleasant. In front of the stone table, Ness Yao saw the worried look of the four maids and said with a smile, "Don't think too much. It's okay. My royal father and I just have different attitudes. Father and son usually quarrel, let alone me and him." In the royal city, in a mansion not far from the royal palace, after several days of rest, Summer Solstice's injuries gradually improved. Although her body hadn't fully recovered, she looked fine on the surface. In the mansion, Ning Chen was busy selecting medicinal materials. After being ill for a long time, he had become a good doctor. His knowledge of most of the medicines for wounds was probably not inferior to any doctor. After lying down for several days, Summer Solstice felt uncomfortable all over. She walked out of the room with some difficulty. Seeing the busy figure in the courtyard, she asked, "What time is it?" "It's almost noon." Hearing the movement behind him, Ning Chen looked back and saw the woman walking out. He smiled and said, "Why are you up? How do you feel?" "Much better." Summer Solstice softly replied and stepped forward. Looking at the medicinal materials the former was arranging, she said with a strange expression, "The medicine I've been taking these days were all made by you?" Ning Chen nodded and said with a light smile, "Why? Are you doubting my skills? Are you worried that I'll poison you to death?" "That's not what I meant." Summer Solstice felt that her tone wasn't right. She hurriedly shook her head and denied it. "I just feel that it's strange that you actually know about medicine when your cultivation level is so high. Being ill for a long time makes a good doctor. I've used these medicines in the past, so I'm very familiar with their medicinal properties. Your injuries look very serious, but actually, the damage to your internal organs isn't that serious. You'll be fine after a few days of rest," Ning Chen said with a smile. Summer Solstice went silent. After a moment, she softly said, "Thank you." Hearing this, Ning Chen was startled at first, but he quickly regained his senses. Smiling, he said, "It's really not easy for Miss Summer Solstice to thank me like this. However, I've saved your life. Isn't this a little too little? What else do you want?" Summer Solstice deliberately revealed a surprised expression and said, "Huh." Seeing the former's reaction, Ning Chen revealed a smile and said, "It seems that Miss has almost recovered. You've become much more cheerful. I'm only forgiving you for injuring me because you've worked so hard to take care of me these past few days." Summer Solstice squatted down and looked at the pile of medicinal herbs on the ground. She suddenly felt a headache. She didn't recognize any of these things. "That's right. What race are you from? Among the 100 races, those that have kings should all be large races. Your identity must be very special." Ning Chen turned his head and looked at the girl beside him and asked curiously, "It's a secret. I can't tell you." Summer Solstice curled her lips and said, "It's fine if you don't want to tell me. I'm just curious anyway." Ning Chen casually replied and then continued to fiddle with his medicinal herbs. These days, he had been studying these things and found it quite interesting. No wonder Grandpa Shen Nong had the perseverance to taste the 100 herbs. Other than his benevolence to save the world, perhaps he also had some desire for unknown knowledge. He wasn't as noble as Grandpa Shen Nong. He couldn't save the world, but he could still save a girl. Summer Solstice squatted beside him and watched him fiddle with the herbs. After a while, she felt bored. "Then, what race are you from? In the information about Sunrise Royal City, there's no such person like you at all." Thinking that she was now captured by the person in front of her, Summer Solstice still felt a little unconvinced and asked, "It's a secret." Ning Chen casually replied, "It's fine if you don't want to tell me. I'm just curious too." Summer Solstice said angrily, "That's right. Your elder sister wouldn't be so stupid as to come back and save you again, right?" Ning Chen carefully placed the lingji in his hand into the wooden box he had prepared and casually asked. When Summer Solstice heard this, Her white brows instantly frowned. She said a little worriedly, "My elder sister is stubborn. She will definitely come back again. Take it." Ning Chen threw the wooden box to the former and said, "Tell me, are you guys stupid? This is Sunrise Royal City. Even if you succeed, what are the chances of you escaping? Exchanging 2 lives for 1. It's clearly a losing business, yet you guys still insist on doing it. Even if you want to kill that Nest Chazerei, you should find a time when he leaves the city. You're not convinced even if I say you guys are stupid. Oomph." Summer Solstice hugged the wooden box and snorted coldly with gritted teeth. However, she didn't know how to refute. "Speak of Chow Chow." Ning Chen stood up, patted the dust off his body and said, "Prepare to receive the guest." "Who's Chow Chow?" Summer Solstice asked a little confusedly. "The fastest person in the world," Ning Chen casually replied. Then he reminded a little worriedly, "That young lord of the royal city is here. You have to endure it. This is his territory. If you continue to cause trouble, I won't be able to save you." "I know," Summer Solstice replied with gritted teeth. "Brother Ning, this young lord is here again." When the two's words fell, outside the courtyard, Nest Chazerei walked in with an ancient sword in hand. Before he arrived, his voice could already be heard. Not long later, in front of the backyard, Nest Chazerei walked over. When he saw the 2 people in the courtyard, he laughed heartily. "You're both here? You sure come frequently." Seeing the former, Summer Solstice's heart was filled with an unknown anger, and she mocked. "Royal Father has ordered me to invite Brother Ning to the royal palace. Royal Father's orders cannot be disobeyed. I have no choice either." Nest Chazerei's tone carried a hint of helplessness as he smiled. "Jackals of the same lair." Summer Solstice coldly snorted. "Miss Summer Solstice's words are wrong." Nest Chazerei lightly laughed and said, "I am me, and my royal father is my royal father. I have been unhappy with him for a long time. However, I can't beat him, so I have no choice but to listen to him." "Mph." Summer Solstice coldly snorted again, and no longer paid any attention to him. "Young lord, Miss Summer Solstice's injuries have yet to recover. Let's wait a few more days." Ning Chen smiled. "Let's not wait," Yu Yao said with a bitter smile. "As long as you don't go, I will be constantly urged by Royal Father. Just go and meet him. This is your first time coming to Sunrise Royal City, and you have saved my life as well. He won't make things difficult for you." "That urgent?" Ning Chen doubtfully asked. "It's very urgent." Nest Chazerei vigorously nodded. "Then I can't go even more." Ning Chen revealed a look of disdain and said, "Even a fool can see that there's something fishy about this. Young lord, your father is the king of the Red Dust Realm, and I can't beat him. If I say something wrong and make your father unhappy, I won't even have the chance to run away. Such a simple logic, even a fool can understand it. Do you think I'm stupid? I'm not stupid, right?" Nest Chazerei was choked to the point that he couldn't say a word. Actually, he also felt that there was something wrong with his royal father's attitude, but he was forced to come out and pass on the message. "Mr. Ning, you think too narrow-minded of this king." Just then, a majestic voice rang out from the sky above the mansion. In the next moment, tens of thousands of rays of light converged and an illusory yet powerful figure walked out. A terrifying pressure swept out, causing the entire world to change color. King Sunrise. Within the mansion, Ning Chen looked at the figure that appeared in the void, and his expression turned solemn. Chapter 993. Outside the Sunrise Palace, in a mansion, the king came in person. His unusually powerful aura distorted the world and shocked the whole city. In the backyard of the mansion, Ning Chen looked at King Sunrise in the sky with a serious expression. On the side, Summer Solstice's eyes were filled with hatred, and her body trembled unconsciously. Ning Chen took half a step forward and blocked her hateful eyes with his body. "Father!" Yu Yao recovered from the shock and bowed respectfully. "Yu Yao, you have disappointed father this time." In the sky, King Sunrise said lightly. Yu Yao was silent and didn't refute. "I didn't know King Sunrise would come. Sorry for not coming out to meet you." Ning Chen cupped his fists and said calmly, "Mr. Ning, you don't have to be so polite." King Sunrise looked at the young man below. His scorching eyes seemed to be able to penetrate people, making people shudder. Behind Ning Chen, Summer Solstice trembled more violently. She was filled with hatred and fear. Even in the whole primitive secret realm, a king-level existence was an absolute powerhouse. Except for a few emperors, no one could defeat them. "Mr. Ning, the one behind you should be Miss Summer Solstice. You are indeed a blessed girl. Mr. Ning really has an extraordinary vision." King Sunrise looked at the woman behind the plain-clothed young man. His aura was even stronger than before. It was powerful and heavy, like a mountain pressing down. "King Sunrise, you flatter me. Summer Solstice, come out and greet Senior King Sunrise." Ning Chen looked back and said with a smile. Summer Solstice's body stiffened. After a moment, she calmed down, took half a step forward, and bowed silently. "The Phoenix Clan. I didn't expect this clan to have descendants in the world." Sizing up the woman below, King Shuri sighed softly and said with emotion. Hearing this, Summer Solstice's body trembled. She didn't expect to be recognized at a glance. On the side, Ning Chen was also surprised. The Phoenix Clan? Wasn't that a close relative of the Phoenix? Didn't that mean that Summer Solstice might know something about the Phoenix? Thinking of this, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. In this case, he couldn't let anything happen to Summer Solstice. "Summer Solstice, you are still injured. You can't come out for a long time. Go back." Ning Chen looked at the woman beside him and said calmly. Summer Solstice was slightly stunned. She immediately came to her senses and bowed. Then she turned and walked toward the back room. In the void, King Shuri quietly watched the two of them singing the same tune without interrupting. His purpose today was not Summer Solstice, but the young man in front of him. He could tell Xia Zhi's identity at a glance, but he could not tell the identity of this young man. In this world, there were people who could hide from his eyes, but not many. He always felt that there was a strange power left on the young man in front of him, and it was this power that made him unable to see through this person. "May I know why King Shuri has come to my humble abode?" Ning Chen did not beat around the bush in front of the sage lord of the Sunrise Royal City. "This king has come to discuss a matter with Mr. Ning." King Shuri said calmly, "In 10 months, it will be the day when the 100 clans select young generals for the expedition to the realm beyond heaven. My Sunrise Royal City has 2 places. Ness Chazarei Union will take one of them, and I want to give the other place to Mr. Ning." Hearing this, Ning Chen's expression didn't change much. He smiled and said, "I don't deserve it. This junior thanks Senior King Shuri for your kindness, but this junior is not interested in this matter. A man should fight on the battlefield and make achievements. My primitive secret realm and the realm beyond heaven will have a great war sooner or later. This is an unfinished war in the Antiquity Age, so it is inevitable. Mr. Ning has such attainments in martial arts at such a young age. In the future, you will definitely shine in the decisive battle between the 2 realms. It will be easy for you to be crowned king." King Shuri said seriously. Ning Chen smiled and said, "That's not my ambition. But anyway, this junior has to thank Senior King Shuri again." Above the void, King Shuri narrowed his eyes slightly. He really didn't expect this person to refuse so straightforwardly. This time, the 100 clans had spent a lot of resources to select generals for the expedition to the realm beyond heaven. For the outstanding ones, the rewards were also unprecedentedly amazing. However, the young man in front of him didn't care about it at all, which really made it hard for him to understand. "Mr. Ning, please think about it again. 3 days later, I hope Mr. Ning can go to the Sunrise Royal Palace and tell me your final decision in person." After saying this, King Shuri didn't say anything more. His figure dissipated and he left the mansion. After the king left, several people in the mansion were relieved. In the room, Summer Solstice walked out, her hands still trembling slightly unconsciously. Although only a clone of King Shuri came, the unparalleled pressure was still so strong that it made people unable to resist. In the courtyard, Yu Yao took a deep look at the young man in front of him and said, "Brother Ning, I have no right to interfere with your decision. However, This is indeed a rare opportunity. Even I didn't expect that my father would give one of the places to you. If possible, I hope Brother Ning can cherish this opportunity. I won't say anything else and will take my leave first. After saying this, Yu Yao cupped his fists and saluted. He didn't stay any longer and turned to walk out of the mansion. In front of the room, Summer Solstice looked at the figure in the courtyard and frowned again and again. In the war between the two realms in the future, the current younger generation would become an indispensable force. The 100 clans attached great importance to this selection. Even a royal family like the Sunrise Royal City only got 2 places. It was easy to imagine how precious it was. King Shuri was willing to give one of the places to an outsider. If it was only because Mr. Ning saved the life of the young lord of the Sunrise Royal City, she would never believe it. What on earth was King Shuri planning? Or what was this gloomy king plotting? Miss Summer Solstice. In the courtyard, Ningchen turned back, looked at the woman in front of the room, and said with a smile, "Let me ask you something." "What's the matter?" Summer Solstice came back to her senses and looked at him warily. Seeing the woman's gaze, Ningchen chuckled and said, "I didn't do anything to you. Is there a need to be so cautious? Since the Sunrise Royal City values you so much, I have to be careful. Who knows when you will hand me over to take the credit?" Summer Solstice said unhappily, "You think too highly of yourself. All right, let me ask you something. Do you know if there are phoenixes in this world?" Ningchen asked seriously. "Phoenixes?" Summer Solstice frowned and said, "Why do you ask this?" Ningchen turned over his right hand and a fiery red phoenix feather appeared. The tiny flames were dancing and it was so beautiful that people couldn't bear to look away. Phoenix feather. Seeing the feather in Ningchen's hand, Summer Solstice was shocked and said in surprise, "Where did you get it?" "It's a long story. I will tell you when I have time. Miss Summer Solstice, you are a member of the Luan tribe. You should know more about phoenixes than ordinary people. Can you answer my question?" Ningchen asked seriously. Summer Solstice was silent. After thinking for a long time, she replied, "Phoenixes did exist in the past, but I don't know if they are still alive in this world." "Is there no phoenix tribe among the 100 tribes?" Ningchen asked seriously. Summer Solstice shook her head and said, "Phoenixes are gods. Even if they exist, there are very few of them." Ningchen looked at the woman in front of him and said seriously, "If I want to know about phoenixes, where can I go to ask? The king of the Luan tribe may know some information, but I can't be sure." Summer Solstice said softly, "The king of the Luan tribe." Ningchen narrowed his eyes. If that was the case, the king who fought with King Shuri should be the king of the Luan tribe. It seemed that he had to go to the Luan tribe if he wanted to know more about phoenixes. "Summer Solstice, although I don't know what grudges there are between the Luan tribe and the Sunrise Royal family, this King Shuri is not simple. His strength is definitely one of the best among the king-level experts. You have to be careful." Ningchen reminded her seriously. "I know." Summer Solstice nodded with a slightly gloomy expression and said, "We were in such a hurry because we had no choice. The Sunrise Royal family is the descendant of the ancient 3-legged golden crow tribe. They are extremely talented. This generation's King Shuri has the bearing of an emperor. Our king is old and has no hope of breaking through to the emperor level, so he took the risk. Every family has its own difficulties." Ningchen sighed and said, "Let's find a chance to leave the Sunrise Royal City first. If your sister risks her life to save you again, I will have a headache." Hearing this, Summer Solstice narrowed her eyes and said, "Why do we have to find a chance? The Sunrise Royal City is so respectful to you. Isn't it up to you to decide when to leave? Are you really stupid or pretending to be stupid?" Ningchen said helplessly, "The reason why King Shuri is so polite to me is that I still have value. Once I make the decision to leave, my value will be gone. For a lord like King Shuri who has been in a high position for a long time, there have always been 2 kinds of people in the world, his own people and his enemies. My choice is directly related to King Shuri's attitude towards us in the future." Hearing this, Summer Solstice was shocked and said, "You mean King Shuri will attack you? Who knows? Maybe I'm gauging the heart of a gentleman with my own mean measure." Ningchen smiled and said, "However, I can live until today not only because I'm luckier than ordinary people, but more importantly, I'm more narrow-minded than anyone else. You can pretend to agree to King Shuri's conditions." Summer Solstice suggested. Ningchen sighed and said, "Silly girl, there is something called an oath in this world. If you break an oath, you will be punished by heaven. Only a fool would do that. I can't do this and I can't do that. What should I do?" Summer Solstice said with a headache. "I don't know. I'm thinking about it." Ningchen answered honestly. In the current situation, they would not be in any danger if they stayed in the city. Once they left without permission, King Shuri's attitude would not be so friendly. If he was alone, it would be fine. If he couldn't win, he could run away. Now that summer solstice was a burden, he really had to think of a way. God bless that Dong Yu wouldn't come at this time. Just as Ningchen was praying to God, outside the Sunrise Royal City, a beautiful figure stepped out in the cold rain. She looked at the city in front of her with unswerving eyes. In order to save her sister, she would step into a dangerous place again. Chapter 994. The Sunrise Imperial City was a divine city where the sun shone brightly and there was never night. It had been passed down for countless years and was almost immortal. Outside the city, Dong Yu walked over and looked at the Imperial City in front of her with a determined expression. At the same time, in a mansion not far from the Sunrise Imperial Palace, Summer Solstice sensed something and her expression changed. "What's wrong?" Ningchen sensed the abnormality of the woman beside him and asked. "Dong Yu is here." Summer Solstice looked anxious and said, "Lord Ning, I beg you. You must find a way to save her." Ningchen's eyes darkened when he heard this. What he was afraid of really happened. In the Imperial City, Dong Yu, who was covered in wind and snow, moved faster and faster. Relying on the telepathic connection between her and Summer Solstice, she quickly rushed toward the mansion in the distance. At the same time, in the Imperial Palace, King Sunrise appeared in the Imperial Palace. He looked into the distance and narrowed his eyes. This woman came at the right time. "Summer Solstice, go back to your room and don't say anything." In the mansion, Ningchen looked at the wind and snow that was rapidly approaching from the distance and said. Before he finished speaking, the wind and snow arrived. In the cold air, Dong Yu rushed out. Her unusually strong cultivation shocked the world. Her slender hands condensed into frost and turned into steel. Dong Yu's figure flashed past with murderous intent. Before the wind and snow, Ningchen's figure was as different as a mountain. He raised his hand and condensed yuan to meet the attack head-on. Their palms met. In an instant, extremely cold air spread out rapidly. The entire mansion was instantly frozen and turned into a field of ice and snow. The two white figures were covered in snow. They fought fiercely in the world of ice and snow. Their martial arts were so beautiful that it was difficult to look away. The battle between the two powerhouses was shocking. Dong Yu's hands were like divine blades that could destroy anything. Her fierce attacks cut open cracks in the world. Facing the attack, Ningchen moved strangely. His figure wandered in the wind and rain without any panic on his face. In the Imperial Palace, King Sunrise looked at the battle in the distance. A strange look flashed across his majestic face. Last time, the king of the Luan tribe was holding back, so he couldn't see this young man's moves. Today, he did not let him down. With such a foundation and battle prowess, he was not inferior to a Red Dust Realm expert. If he could represent Sunrise Royal City in the battle, his plan would be able to take a step forward. Far away in the mansion, the battle between the two had reached its climax. With the help of his peerless foundation, Ningchen's moves were like a god descending to the mortal world. Every move he made was astonishingly powerful. Inside the frozen room, Xia Ji watched the fight between the two. The anxiety on her face grew stronger and stronger. However, her body had not recovered yet, and Ningchen had given her orders first, so she did not dare to make a sound. Summer Solstice. In the battle, Dong Yu looked at her sister who was trapped in the room. Her eyes were also filled with anxiety. She attacked even more viciously, wanting to break through the obstacles and save her. The two palms collided, and their silhouettes soared into the sky. The winter rain palm origin energy rose to the sky, the wind and snow were in a frenzy, and the vast palm fell from the sky. 12 styles of spiritual rhino, sky-propping waterfall. The moon-worshipping clan's ultimate skill appeared once again. Ning Chen flipped his palm, and a giant waterfall rose to the sky. The world-shaking power swept across the 8 barren lands and overturned the heaven and earth. The two extreme powers collided, and the victor was immediately decided. The peerless foundation destroyed all obstacles and landed on Dong Yu's chest. Ugh! A pool of blood splashed out, dyeing the wind and snow red. Dong Yu's figure flew dozens of feet away and crashed into the wall of the mansion. Dong Yu! Behind her, Xia Ji's pupils shrank fiercely as she exclaimed. Mr. Ning really doesn't have any pity for the fairer sex. However, this woman has repeatedly caused trouble in our Sunrise Royal City. We can't tolerate her anymore. Mr. Ning, nothing can be accomplished without rules and standards. Please return this woman to our Sunrise Royal City to be punished as a warning to others. Above the void, the multicolored light gathered, and an illusory figure walked out. He glanced at the seriously injured woman not far away and said in a cold tone. Ning Chen's expression turned serious. Looking at the mighty lord of Sunrise Royal City, he said calmly, Senior King Sunrise, the young master of your city has promised to hand these two people over to me. I hope King Sunrise can make an exception this time. What does Mr. Ning need these two sinful slaves for? King Sunrise said indifferently. These two are decent people. I need 2 maids to serve me tea. If Senior King Sunrise can make an exception this time, I will be very grateful. Ning Chen sighed helplessly in his heart, took a step back and said, King Sunrise looked at the person in front of him. After a long time, he said lightly, Since Mr. Ning has asked for mercy, I won't pursue this matter. I hope Mr. Ning's decision won't disappoint me 3 days later. As soon as he finished speaking, the multicolored light in the void dissipated. King Sunrise disappeared and left the mansion. Ning Chen turned around and looked at the seriously injured Dong Yu not far away. He waved his right hand, and the ice between heaven and earth dissipated and returned to its original state. Dong Yu. After the ice was removed, Xia Ji hurried out and came to Dong Yu. She asked anxiously, Are you okay? She's fine. I just scattered her genuine qi temporarily. She will recover after a few days of rest. Ning Chen stepped forward, raised his hand, condensed his qi, and poured it into Dong Yu's body. Soon, Dong Yu opened her eyes and vomited blood again. Looking at the familiar face in front of her, she struggled to get up. You'd better not move. Xia Ji, help your sister back to her room to rest, Ning Chen said calmly. Okay. Xia Ji immediately nodded and said, Dong Yu, listen to Mr. Ning. Don't move. I'll explain to you what you want to know later. After that, Xia Ji carefully helped the woman beside her up. She nodded to Ning Chen and thanked him. Then she helped Dong Yu walk to the room in front. Seeing the communication between the two, Dong Yu suppressed the doubts in her heart and walked forward step by step with her injured body. In the courtyard, Ning Chen looked at the mansion that had been mostly destroyed by the battle and narrowed his eyes. This time, Dong Yu really brought him a lot of trouble. He had no choice but to go to King Sunrise's invitation. Mr. Ning. After a long time, Xia Ji walked out of the room. Looking at the figure standing quietly in the courtyard, she said apologetically, I'm sorry to have caused you trouble again this time. Ning Chen looked back at the woman behind him and said with a smile, It doesn't matter. Since King Sunrise wants me to go, I'll go. Misfortune and fortune go hand in hand. This trip is not necessarily a bad thing. Xia Ji still looked guilty when she heard this. Originally, Mr. Ning could not be threatened by King Sunrise, but she and Dong Yu dragged him down and forced him to make this choice. Miss Xia Ji, you don't have to feel guilty. I have my own plans to save you. After all, in this world, not everyone can have 2 maids who are close to the red dust realm to serve them tea, Ning Chen said with a chuckle. Mr. Ning, you're making fun of us again. Xia Ji said softly. She looked at the person in front of her and said softly, Mr. Ning, King Sunrise is very scheming. You must be more careful. Don't worry. Ningchen nodded and said, as long as I'm still useful to King Sunrise, he won't attack me easily. Xia Ji nodded. After a moment of silence, she said, Mr. Ning, if you really want to know something about the phoenix, Dong Yu and I can take you to see the king of our clan in the future. Ningchen chuckled and said, thank you very much, Miss Xia Ji. With your promise, I will find a way to take you two out of Sunrise Royal City alive. In the room, Dong Yu listened to the conversation of the two people outside. A strange color flashed across her similar but slightly cold face. It was really hard for her to understand that Xia Ji trusted this person so much after only a few days of getting along. Outside the room, Xia Ji walked back. Looking at the woman on the bed, she said, Dong Yu, how do you feel? Much better, Dong Yu said softly. She looked at Xia Ji seriously and said, Xia Ji, do you really trust him so much? Xia Ji was silent. After a moment, she nodded and said, Mr. Ning is a good person. You will know when you get along with him. Dong Yu nodded and did not say more. She did not know whether he was a good person or not, but he was definitely not a simple person. His scheming might be far beyond their imagination. In the courtyard, Ningchen looked at Sunrise Royal Palace in the distance. His calm eyes flashed with thoughts. The trip to the palace in 3 days was not ordinary. He had to face a king of the Red Dust Realm. One wrong move and the consequences would be unimaginable. He was confident that he could stay alive. However, the two women behind him might die here. This was not an outcome he wanted to see. 3 days passed quickly. The agreed date arrived. In the mansion, Ningchen looked at the divine sun above Sunrise Royal Palace and smiled. He had to face what was coming. In front of the room, Xia Ji walked out. She could not hide the worry on her face. The king of the Red Dust Realm was too powerful. Facing such a terrifying existence, she did not even have the confidence to fight back. Mr. Ning. Xia Ji wanted to say something but stopped. Don't worry. Ningchen turned around and looked at the woman behind him. He smiled and said, You and Dong Yu stay here. I will be back soon. Xia Ji nodded and said, Be careful. Don't worry. Ningchen replied and didn't delay any longer before walking out of the estate with large strides. Sunrise Royal Palace. In front of the majestic royal palace, thousands of stone steps extended for hundreds of meters. Thousands of royal guards stood on both sides. They were covered in heavy armor and looked mighty. In the royal palace, in front of the high throne, rays of light flowed. The king stood quietly. A powerful pressure filled the entire royal palace. Heaven and earth distorted. It was difficult to withstand the king's pressure. Below, Yu Yao, who was dressed in blue, stood with a sword in his hand. His expression was calm and indifferent, waiting for the person who kept the promise to come. At this moment, at the end of the stone steps, a plain-clothed figure walked over. His steps were steady and unhurried. In the palace, Yu Yao looked at the figure walking over. His eyes narrowed. As expected, he came. In front of the throne, King Sunrise's lips curved into an incomprehensible smile. He was very gratified that this person could come. After all, killing a future king of the Red Dust Realm with his own hands was not something to be happy about. Under the gazes of the two, Ningchen walked up the stairs in front of the royal palace. His expression was as calm as water, without the slightest hint of nervousness. After a few breaths, Ningchen walked into the royal palace. Looking at the figure in front of the throne, he politely bowed and said, Junior Ningchen greets Senior King Sunrise. His words were understated, neither servile nor overbearing. After bowing, Ningchen straightened his body and stood quietly in the royal palace. He was like a sheathed divine sword. Although the sharpness was hidden, it still had the power to slash the sky. Chapter 995. In the Imperial Hall of Sunrise Palace, Ji Ming came alone to meet the Lord of Sunrise City according to the agreement. In front of the throne, King Sunrise looked at the young man who was neither servile nor overbearing, and a touch of appreciation flashed across his face. Putting everything else aside, this man's courage alone was incomparable to ordinary people. In this world, there were not many people who dared to stand here and face him. Mr. Ning, you can tell me your decision, King Sunrise said calmly. I accept Senior King Sunrise's kindness to participate in the selection of the 100 clans on behalf of Sunrise City. Ning Chen looked at the king in front of the throne and replied. Hearing this, King Sunrise smiled and said, Mr. Ning's decision really didn't disappoint me. Guards, bring up the 100 weapons platform. As soon as he finished speaking, 4 King Treading Immortals guards carried a huge stone platform into the hall. On the stone platform, hundreds of weapons were displayed, and each of them was a rare divine weapon with a threatening edge. I see that Mr. Ning has always been barehanded. Presumably, you haven't found a suitable weapon. I have some collections in Sunrise City. If Mr. Ning doesn't mind, you can choose one. King Sunrise said calmly. Ning Chen looked at the divine weapons on the 100 weapons platform, and light flashed across his eyes. These weapons were really extraordinary. At the side, Yu Yao's gaze swept across the 100 weapons stage. He did not say a single word. His Sunrise Royal City had quite a number of divine weapons, and he could afford to give them away. However, there were also differences between divine weapons. It all depended on whether this Mr. Ning had the foresight. In front of the 100 weapons platform, Ning Chen glanced at the divine weapons on the platform. Just as he was about to raise his hand, among the weapons, an ancient cyan sword trembled, and the sword aura flowed. It was extraordinary. Oh! In front of the throne, King Sunrise was surprised to see this. The divine weapon had recognized Mr. Ning as its master. This Mr. Ning was actually a master of swords. Heavenly Rainbow, made of mother of green jade, is the king of weapons. Mr. Ning, you have really impressed me that Heavenly Rainbow has recognized you as its master. While speaking, King Sunrise stepped down from the throne. In an instant, the hall trembled, and the endless dense mist shook violently. In front of the 100 weapons platform, Ning Chen felt the aura of the Heavenly Rainbow sword. He was silent for a long time, and his outstretched hand never held the ancient sword in front of him. Brother Ning. Not far away, Nes Yao lightly frowned and reminded. What's wrong? Why aren't you retrieving your sword? Ning Chen didn't answer. He silently walked to the side and picked up a long and narrow black saber. I choose this one. King Shuri's expression froze slightly. He couldn't figure out the reason. Dark Blade Wild Bone. Not far away, Nes Yao's eyes were similarly filled with confusion. Although Wild Bone was extraordinary, compared to Heavenly Rainbow taking the initiative to recognize him as its master, Heavenly Rainbow was clearly more suitable for Mr. Ning. Mr. Ning, have you really decided? If you haven't decided yet, you can choose again. King Shuri frowned. No need. Ning Chen shook his head and said, I have no fate with the Heavenly Rainbow Godly Sword. Now, this black saber is more suitable for me. Since Mr. Ning has decided to choose Wild Bone, then I won't persuade you anymore. The black saber Wild Bone is indeed an extraordinary divine weapon. Mr. has a good eye. King Shuri nodded. This junior thanks Senior King Shuri for generously giving me this weapon. In the 100 Clans competition 10 months later, this junior will definitely do his best and won't let Senior King Shuri down. Ning Chen said with a serious expression. Not to do your best, but to win the first place in the 100 Clans competition and bring back the Yin Yang Non-Jade. King Shuri looked at the young man in front of him and said calmly, Mr. Ning, do you understand my words? Ning Chen stared at the king in front of him. After a long time, he nodded and said, This junior understands. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen stretched out his hand and swore to the heavens. Every word was witnessed by the heavens. I, Ning Chen, swear to the heavens that I will bring back the Yin Yang Non-Jade for Shuri Royal City at all costs. If I violate the oath, I am willing to. As soon as the oath was made, thunder rumbled in the sky above Shuri Royal City, and the rumbling sound resounded throughout the city. In the royal palace, they looked at each other calmly and indifferently. The corners of King Shuri's mouth curled up, gradually revealing a smile. At this moment, in a mansion not far away, Summer Solstice looked at the thunder in the sky with a shocked expression. What was going on? An hour later, in front of the mansion, a figure in plain clothes walked back with a calm expression, no different from when he left. Seeing the former return, Summer Solstice quickly stepped forward and asked with a worried expression, "Mr. Ning, are you okay?" Ning Chen smiled and said, "Do I look like I'm not okay? Well, don't worry. Get ready. We will leave Shuri Royal City tomorrow." "We can leave?" Summer Solstice asked in surprise. "Of course." Ning Chen replied grumpily and said, "Why else would I go to see King Shuri? To chat?" No, I'm just too happy." Summer Solstice knew that she had said something wrong and quickly smiled apologetically, saying, "Thank you, Mr. Ning. I will go and tell Dongyu the news now." With that, Summer Solstice ran to the back room with a happy face. Ning Chen smiled gently. Compared to Dongyu's steadiness, Summer Solstice's personality was obviously more cheerful. However, he liked this girl more. It was easy to get along with her. In the room, Summer Solstice ran over and looked at Dongyu, who was resting on the bed. She said excitedly, "Dongyu, we can leave now. Mr. Ning just said it." "I've heard it," Dongyu responded. Looking at her younger sister in front of her, she gently reprimanded, "Be steady. Don't always make such a fuss." "I know. Don't always lecture me." Summer Solstice replied discontentedly, "I'm just happy. I thought I would never be able to go back. Fortunately, I met Mr. Ning." Dongyu nodded and looked through the window at the figure in plain clothes in the courtyard. This Mr. Ning was really powerful. She hoped that they could go back smoothly this time. At the same time, in the palace of King Shuri, Yu Yao looked at his father in front of the throne and said seriously, "There are countless talents among the 100 clans, and there are even peerless geniuses of the royal family. Father, don't you think you've gone too far? Are you doubting yourself or that Mr. Ning?" In front of the throne, King Shuri said lightly, "It's not about who I'm doubting." Yu Yao's expression sank and he said, "I swear to the heavens. If I were to break my oath, royal father would definitely know the consequences. Mr. Ning has saved the son's life, so royal father, if you do this, wouldn't you be framing this son of injustice? This is his own choice. It has nothing to do with you. Yu Yao, know your own identity. You're the young lord of Shuri Royal City. What you have to consider first is the interests of Royal City, not the so-called benevolence and righteousness." King Shuri said coldly, "His Royal Highness." Yu Yao's face darkened. After a while, he snorted and turned to leave. "I'll try my best to get back the Yin Yang Non-Jade. As for what I should consider first, you don't have to worry about it." As he spoke, Yu Yao's figure gradually went away. His unyielding sword was as tall and straight as a mountain. In the palace, King Shuri looked at his son who was going away, and his face became colder and colder. This unfilial son was getting more and more presumptuous. He didn't even take his words seriously. Outside Shuri Royal City, the sun set and the moon rose. A day passed quickly. In the east, when the sun rose again, 3 figures appeared outside Shuri Royal City. After dozens of days, they walked out of the city for the first time. "We're finally out." When they walked out of the city gate, Xiaji finally couldn't hold back the excitement in her heart and cheered. "Xiaji." Beside her, Dongyu reprimanded. Xiaji curled her lips and restrained herself a little. However, the excitement on her face was still hard to hide. She looked left and right with unusual excitement. In front of the two, Ning Chen smiled faintly. He didn't interfere with the matters between the two sisters. "Young Master Ning, where are we going?" After being excited for a long time, Xiaji gradually calmed down. She looked at the man in front of her and asked, "I'll send you back to the Phoenix clan first. Then, I'll go to the battlefield of the 100 races competition." Ning Chen replied. Dongyu heard this and frowned. Beside her, Xiaji stuck out her tongue embarrassedly. She forgot to tell Dongyu about this. "Mr. Ning, the Phoenix clan has never received outsiders." "I'm afraid," Dongyu said with a troubled expression. "Dongyu?" Xiaji said unhappily. "Young Master Ning is our savior. Moreover, he just wants to ask a few questions. He'll leave soon." Dongyu sighed. She didn't want to be so heartless, but rules were rules. How could she make an exception so easily? "Miss Dongyu, there's no need to be troubled. I'll wait outside the Phoenix clan. Once the Phoenix clan king agrees, I'll enter. If it's really impossible, then I'll have to trouble Miss Xiaji and Miss Dongyu to ask on my behalf, Ningchen said calmly. Dongyu was silent. After a moment, she nodded and said, Mr. Ning, I'm sorry. Miss Dongyu, there's no need to apologize. Each clan has its own rules. I can understand. Ningchen smiled and replied. Young Master Ning? Behind them, Xiaji spoke with a strange tone. What's wrong? Ningchen looked back, puzzled. You use a saber? Xiaji looked at the saber tied to Ningchen's waist in surprise. Yesterday she was too excited. Only now did she realize that Ningchen had an additional saber. On the side, Dongyu was helpless. It had already been an entire day. Why did this girl only notice now? I know a little, Ningchen said casually. Hypocrite. Xiaji curled her lips. If you know a little, then I know nothing. Ningchen chuckled and said, This is a gift from King Shuri. It's called the wild bone. It seems to be made from the bones of an ancient ferocious beast. I liked it, so I accepted it. That old monster is so generous. He definitely doesn't have good intentions. Young Master Ning, you didn't agree to his excessive request, did you? Xiaji asked worriedly. Ningchen smiled and shook his head. It's just a small matter. All right, let's hurry up. You've been missing for so long. The elders in the clan must be very worried. The earlier you go back, the earlier they can be at ease. Yes. Xiaji nodded obediently. Her excited face revealed a trace of longing. She hadn't gone back for a long time and was a little homesick. Ningchen looked ahead, deep in thought. The Phoenix clan should have some news about the Phoenix. He hoped that this trip wouldn't disappoint him. Chapter 996. Three Danger Mountain was a majestic divine river that stretched for thousands of miles. It was the legendary secret realm of the Wan clan. For thousands of years, the mountain had been sealed and no one could enter. More than 10 days later, three figures walked in front of Three Danger Mountain. The man in the lead had a delicate face. He wore plain clothes and looked untainted by the dust of the mortal world. 300 meters in front of the mountain, Ningchen stopped. He looked at the two girls behind him and said, Dongyu, Xiaji, I'll have to trouble you to go and inform them. Dongyu nodded and said softly, Lord Ning, please wait for a moment. After saying that, Dongyu brought Xiaji and walked towards the divine river. Not long after, they disappeared into the mountain range. In front of the mountain range, Ningchen's gaze swept across the divine river. A look of surprise flashed across his face. This divine land was truly incomparable to the mortal world. Inside Three Danger Mountain, layers and layers of restrictions were activated. Dongyu and Xiaji walked in and entered the heart of the Wan clan. The secret realm of the Wan clan was filled with mist. Everywhere was peaceful. In the depths of the secret realm, the king of the Wan clan felt the return of the two girls. He opened his eyes and a look of surprise flashed across his face. The two children had actually returned. Outside Three Danger Mountain, Ningchen stood in front of the mountain and waited quietly. There was no trace of impatience on his face. 2 hours passed. The blazing sun moved westward from the middle of the day to the sunset, but there was still no movement in Mount Three Danger. Right when the last rays of the setting sun disappeared, the space in front of Mount Three Perils swirled, and from the swaying spatial formation markings, a delicate and beautiful figure quickly ran out. In the blink of an eye, she arrived before Ningchen, pulled his arm, and said joyfully, Hurry up, the king of my clan is willing to see you. A smile appeared on Ningchen's face as he allowed Xiaji to drag him along. Together, they walked into the space array. In the blink of an eye, the space in front of the mountain range shook. The two figures faded and disappeared. In the secret realm of the Wan clan, two figures appeared. Xiaji grabbed the arm of the person beside her and quickly walked forward. Hurry up, our king is still waiting. Summer Solstice urged as she dragged the former forward. I'm already very fast. Ningchen was dragged until he could not change his pace. There was a faint helplessness in his expression as he spoke. In the deepest part of Mount Sanwei, in the Qingyu Abyss, green starlight filled the air. Summer Solstice pulled Ningchen and walked over quickly. In front of them, a woman who looked the same as Summer Solstice stood quietly. It was Dongyu who came back first. "Where's the king?" Summer Solstice looked at Winter Rain in front of her and asked in confusion. "They will be here soon," Dongyu said softly. Before he could finish his words, the green stars in the sky suddenly flew up, and an unusually strong pressure descended. In the floating mist, a beautiful figure shrouded in green light walked out, graceful and elegant, with an extraordinary temperament. King. Seeing the visitor, Xie Yi and Dong Yu saluted at the same time with respectful expressions. Beside the two girls, Ning Chen looked at the noble lady who had appeared in front of them. He bowed politely and said, "Greetings, Queen Luan." Within the green light, King Luan sized up the young man in front of him and said, "That day, I saw you." Ning Chen nodded and said, "When Queen Luan fought with King Shuri, I was indeed in Shuri City." "Why did you save Summer Solstice and Dongyu? If you hand them over to King Shuri, you should be able to get more benefits," King Luan said calmly. "I don't lack these benefits," Ning Chen said calmly. "Mr. Ning's confidence has left me with a whole new level of respect." Coldness flashed across King Luan's face. He said, "Can I understand that as long as King Shuri offers enough benefits, Mr. Ning will not hesitate to hand over Summer Solstice and Dongyu?" Ning Chen was not swayed at all. He said calmly, "Queen Luan's assumption is meaningless. Now, Summer Solstice and Dongyu have returned safely. This is the truth." King Luan stared at the young man in front of him. After a long time, his cold expression gradually eased. He was neither servile nor overbearing. "What do you want to know?" King Luan asked. "Information about the phoenixes," Ning Chen said seriously. Hearing this, King Luan narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "The phoenixes have disappeared from this world for tens of thousands of years. Why do you still want to know about them?" "The phoenixes are reborn from the ashes. They can't really die," Ning Chen said calmly. "There is nothing in this world that is truly immortal. The phoenixes are the same. Mr. Ning, what you know is just a legend. It is not credible," King Luan said lightly. "If I can prove that the phoenixes are still alive, will King Luan tell me the information you know?" Ning Chen looked at King Luan and asked seriously, "How do you want to prove it? I know that you have a phoenix feather. However, this doesn't prove anything." King Luan frowned slightly and said, "As long as King Luan agrees to tell me the information about the phoenixes, I have my ways to prove it," Ning Chen said seriously. Hearing this, King Luan frowned again. After a long time, he nodded and said, "As long as you can prove that the phoenixes are still alive in this world, I will agree to your conditions." "Thank you." Ning Chen bowed respectfully and said, "I need some time to prepare. I hope King Luan can be patient for a few days." "Sure." King Luan nodded and looked at the two women below. He said, "Dongyu, Summer Solstice, you can go and rest on behalf of Mr. Ning. Treat him well and don't be rude." Dongyu and Summer Solstice bowed together and replied respectfully. Ning Chen bowed once more before he turned around and left with the two women. After the three of them left the green rain abyss, Dongyu and Summer Solstice secretly sighed in relief. They could finally relax. "You scared me to death." Summer Solstice patted her chest and said, "Why are you two more nervous than me?" Ning Chen smiled. "Of course, we brought you in. If you said something wrong and made King Luan unhappy, we would be in trouble," Summer Solstice said with lingering fear. Ning Chen smiled and said, "King Luan is not as scary as you said. Perhaps you have all misunderstood her." Summer Solstice heard this and looked at him strangely. She said, "This is the first time you have met King Luan. Why do you sound like you know her better than we do?" "I'm just guessing." Ning Chen smiled and replied casually without explaining further. Summer Solstice looked at him with a puzzled expression. Seeing that he did not say anything, she looked at Dongyu with a questioning look. "Let's take Mr. Ning to rest first. If you have any questions, you can ask him later," Dongyu replied calmly. Summer Solstice curled her lips and suppressed the doubts in her heart. She was no longer in a hurry to ask. The three of them walked in the Luan clan's secret territory. It was like spring all year round. Birds sang and flowers bloomed. The spiritual energy was abnormally dense, making people feel relaxed and happy. However, in such a rare secret territory, there were very few people. The Luan clan had a long lifespan, but their ability to reproduce was extremely poor. When the Luan clan was at its most prosperous, there were only about 1,000 people. Now, there were less than half of that number. Along the way, Ningchen looked at the big and small ancient buildings in the Luan clan's secret territory. He carefully scanned them with his spiritual sense and was more and more surprised. There were only so few people in the Luan clan. He had heard that the stronger the clan, the worse their reproductive ability. However, he did not expect that the Luan clan, as a royal clan, had less than 500 people. "We are here. My house is in front." In front of a small river, Summer Solstice happily pointed at a row of wooden houses by the river. Ning Chen's gaze followed the direction of the woman's finger. He saw a plainly dressed woman drying clothes on a bamboo pole. She looked no different from an ordinary person. Mortal realm? Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. Was he mistaken? In front of the river, the woman looked back and saw the three of them walking over. A gentle smile appeared on her delicate face. She said, "You're back, Mother." Summer Solstice quickly ran over and hugged the woman's arm. She happily said, "Did you miss me? Be gentle. Mother's old bones have been shaken by you." The woman gently patted her daughter's head and smiled. "Mother is not old." Summer Solstice giggled. She looked at Ning Chen beside Dong Yu and said, "Mother, this is young Master Ning. Dong Yu and I were able to return this time because of young Master Ning's help." "Greetings, madam." Ning Chen walked forward and bowed respectfully. "You don't have to be so polite, Mr. Ning. Mr. came from afar and must be tired. Summer Solstice, take Mr. Ning back to his room to rest." The woman smiled. Summer Solstice smiled and said, "Young Master Ning, come with me." "Thank you, madam." Ning Chen thanked her and immediately followed Summer Solstice to the wooden house on the side. After the two left, Dong Yu walked forward. She looked at her mother and softly said, "Mother." The woman nodded with a gentle expression and said, "Is there something on your mind?" Dong Yu glanced at the two people walking into the wooden house and said with a worried expression, "Summer Solstice seems to like this Mr. Ning. I'm worried that Summer Solstice will be hurt." The woman put down the clothes in her hand and a smile appeared on her delicate face. She said, "Mr. Ning saved your life, so it's not strange that Summer Solstice is close to him. Young girls all have the experience of worshipping heroes. Your little sister is inexperienced and can't distinguish between worshipping and liking. Once she experiences more in the future, she will understand. All right, you've been tired for several days. Go back to your room and rest. Mother will prepare some food for you." Dong Yu gathered her thoughts and gently nodded. She stepped forward and walked towards the wooden house. Inside the wooden house, Summer Solstice pointed to the innermost room and said softly, "That's yours." After saying that, Summer Solstice pointed to the room next door and said with a smile, "That's mine." Ning Chen smiled and immediately walked towards the room that Summer Solstice had arranged for him. Just as Ning Chen walked into his room and was about to rest, Summer Solstice followed behind him with a smile. "What's the matter?" Ning Chen smiled. "Nothing." Summer Solstice walked into the room and looked around. Finally, she couldn't resist the curiosity in her heart and whispered, "Young Master Ning, how are you going to prove to my king that Phoenix is still alive?" "You'll know in a few days." Ning Chen laughed softly. Summer Solstice curled her lips and said unhappily, "Forget it if you don't want to say it. Stingy." Ning Chen smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Come here, I'll tell you. Don't tell anyone else." Summer Solstice heard this and her eyes lit up. She hurried forward and said confidently, "Tell me, I definitely won't tell anyone else." "Actually," Ning Chen lowered his voice and whispered, "I am Phoenix." Chapter 997. 3 Danger Mountain, the Luan clan's secret realm. It was not a prosperous place, but it was a peaceful paradise. All the Luan clansmen lived a peaceful and ordinary life, standing aloof from worldly affairs. In the secret realm, a small river ran through the entire east and west. Beside the river, there were rows of wooden houses. In front of one of the wooden houses, a beautiful woman was busy going in and out without stopping for a moment. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the sky had already darkened. The woman brought the prepared food into the wooden house, then walked to the room of her two daughters and called out Dong Yu and Xiaji. Xiaji, call Mr. Ning to come out and eat. The woman glanced at her daughter, who was staring at the food with a greedy expression, and said with a gentle expression, Xiaji came back to her senses and quickly nodded. She turned and walked to the innermost room. At this moment, the door opened, and Ning Chen, dressed in white, walked out. Seeing Xiaji, he smiled and said, It smells so good. Of course, my mother's cooking is the best. Xiaji proudly raised her head, as if she was the one being praised. Mr. Ning, come and eat. It's all simple tea and plain food. I hope you can get used to it. The woman turned around and smiled at the two. Madam is too polite. Ning Chen walked forward and looked at the steaming hot food on the table. He sighed inexplicably in his heart. It had been a long time since he had eaten such a home-cooked meal. These years, he had been running around and had almost forgotten what simple tea and plain food tasted like. Sit down and try it. My mother's cooking is very fragrant. Beside him, Summer Solstice reached out and pressed the former to the seat, urging with a hopeful look. Opposite them, the woman and Dong Yu also sat down and picked up their bowls and chopsticks to eat. Xia Yi consciously sat beside Ning Chen and stared at him with her big eyes, waiting for an answer. Ning Chen picked up some food and put it into his mouth. After tasting it, he gave the girl beside him a thumbs up and praised, Delicious! Xia Yi smiled when she heard this. She then picked up her bowl and chopsticks in satisfaction and began to eat happily. Seeing this, the woman smiled softly and did not say anything. On the other hand, Dong Yu frowned slightly, worried about her sister. Dong Yu, what's wrong? Xia Ji glanced at the former and asked in confusion. I'm fine. Dong Yu calmed himself down and responded indifferently. Then he lowered his head and began to eat. Xia Ji looked at her mother and Ning Chen in confusion. Seeing that there was nothing wrong with them, she didn't take it seriously and continued to eat happily. After finishing a bowl of rice, Ning Chen asked for another bowl. Summer Solstice volunteered to serve him rice, which surprised Dong Yu. Usually, at home, she and her mother were the ones who scooped the rice. This girl had never done it even once. Here. Xia Ji came back with a bowl of rice, handed it to the people around her, and said happily, Thank you, Miss Xia Ji. Ning Chen smiled. The dinner lasted for almost an hour. Other than Dong Yu, the other three people at the table seemed to be in a good mood. After dinner, Ning Chen got up and wanted to help clean up, but the woman shook her head and refused. Young master, please rest. These are not things that a man should do. The woman said with a smile and asked Dong Yu and Xia Ji to help clean up the table. The whole family talked and laughed, and the atmosphere was very good. Ning Chen stood there, quietly feeling the rare warm atmosphere. A smile appeared on his calm face. Being ordinary was a blessing. He hoped that Xia Ji's family could be so happy forever. Outside the wooden house, the bright moon rose from the east. The night was slightly cold, but it was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. The moonlight shone on the small river, reflecting the bright moon. It was a paradise that stood aloof from worldly affairs. Without the disputes of the secular world, everything looked so peaceful. Ning Chen walked to the front of the wooden house and looked at the beautiful scenery outside. Gradually, his eyes lost focus. It's cold at night. Mr. Ning, please rest early. Unknowingly, the woman appeared in front of the wooden house and said gently. Ning Chen came back to his senses. Looking at the woman beside him, he said respectfully, Thank you for your hospitality today. The woman smiled and said, Mr. Ning, you don't have to be so polite. You are the savior of Dong Yu and Xia Ji. This is what I should do. Dong Yu and Xia Ji are good girls. However, I don't understand why the Luan king chose them to assassinate the young master of the Sunrise Royal City. Ning Chen expressed his doubts. The woman looked at the peaceful night and said softly, What do you think of this place, Mr. Ning? It's a peaceful place. Ning Chen said honestly. It is indeed peaceful here. However, Mr. Ning should have noticed that there are not many men left in this secret realm. The woman's eyes flashed with emotion. She said, "Behind any peace is blood and sacrifice. The Wan clan is no exception. Now that most of the men of my clan have died in battle, for the peace of this secret realm, the remaining women have no choice but to go out and fight." Hearing this, Ning Chen fell silent. Everyone had an inviolable taboo in their hearts. Peace was hard to come by. "It's late. Mr. Ning, you should rest early." The woman collected her thoughts and looked at the young man beside her with a smile. Ning Chen nodded. Just as he was about to return to his room, he stopped and asked, "Madam, are you in the Red Dust Realm?" The woman smiled and nodded. "I have been in the Red Dust Realm for 1,000 years. The members of the Wan clan have a long lifespan. It's not difficult for me to enter the Red Dust Realm. However, I'm not good at martial arts. Even if I enter the Red Dust Realm, I won't be young master's opponent. Madam is too modest." Ning Chen softly replied. He did not say anything else. He bowed and immediately walked back into the wooden house. In the space outside the 33 heavens, the reverence moon holy ground. On the altar, the red-robed phoenix stood quietly. It passed through the distant space and felt the call from afar. "I will be away for a few days. Protect the holy ground carefully." The red-robed young man looked at the several experts of the Reverence Moon clan below and said. The 4 experts of the Reverence Moon clan bowed respectfully and acknowledged the order. In the next moment, the divine restriction above the Reverence Moon holy ground opened. The phoenix spread its wings and flew away at lightning speed. Its speed surpassed the limits of heaven and earth. It was like a bolt of red lightning cutting through space. It was so fast that people couldn't even see its afterimages. Before they could react, it had already disappeared into the depths of space. In the Wan clan's secret territory, Ning Chen waited quietly for the phoenix body's arrival. There was no trace of anxiety on his face. On the 7th day, phoenix flames filled the air in front of the 3-danger mountain. A red-robed figure walked out from the flames and stopped when he saw the secret territory covered with runes. After waiting for a while, the void in front of the mountain range rippled and a white-robed figure appeared. Behind her, 2 beautiful women walked out together. The moment they saw her, Dong Yu and Xiaji were stunned. They couldn't recover from their shock. Chapter 998. In front of Mount Sanwei, a phoenix descended from the sky. From the phoenix flames, a figure in red walked out. He had the same appearance but a completely different aura. Seeing the person, Dong Yu and Xiaji were shocked. They couldn't help but look at the man beside them in disbelief. "Come back, phoenix body." Ning Chen looked at the figure in red and said. As soon as he finished speaking, the phoenix flames in the sky stirred. Endless flames rose and merged with the 2 bodies. "Dong Yu, Xiaji, take me to see King Wan." Ning Chen looked at the 2 girls beside him and said. Dong Yu and Xiaji recovered from their shock. They nodded with complicated expressions and turned to walk towards Mount Sanwei. Ning Chen stepped forward to catch up. After a few steps, his figure faded and disappeared. In the deepest part of the Wan race's secret territory, Qingyu Abyss. Green starlight filled the entire abyss. On a high platform, the king of the Wan race stood quietly. His body was surrounded by mist and his powerful aura shook the heavens. Outside the Qingyu Abyss, 3 people walked over. The young man in the middle was dressed in plain clothes that fluttered in the wind. His snow-white hair was stained with the aura of time. Seeing the approaching figure, King Wan squinted his eyes. What a powerful force. Compared to the first time he came to see her, the current him revealed the true aura of a powerful cultivator. "Greetings, Senior King Wan." Ning Chen stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Compared to the first time we met, you are different," King Wan said seriously. Ning Chen didn't say anything. He raised his right hand and suddenly, an unusually powerful force spread out. Red flames spread. The divine flames of the phoenix burned the world. Phoenix flames? King Wan was shocked. What was going on? Before he could ask, the phoenix flames in the Qingyu Abyss soared into the sky. In the flames, the phoenix spread its wings. Endless phoenix origin power was released. A huge phoenix shadow covered the sky and the sun. It was shocking. Amidst the sea of flames, the white-haired silhouette stood there quietly. The aura of a peerless master was undeniable. Even though he had yet to enter the mortal world, even the Luan king felt a sense of danger. King Luan's expression froze. So, he was a phoenix. However, his original form was a human. Phoenixes were noble by nature. Why would they give their inheritance to a human? A moment later, in the Qingyu abyss, the phoenix fire that filled the sky quickly converged and disappeared into the body of the white-clothed figure. In the void, the phoenix shadow disappeared, and its aura was restrained. Within the floating mist, King Luan gradually regained his composure and his gaze turned gentle. "What do you want to know?" King Luan asked. "Are there still phoenixes in this world?" Ning Chen asked seriously. "No." King Luan shook his head. "Phoenixes are immortal and indestructible. Why did they disappear?" Ning Chen's expression darkened. "There is no such thing as absolute immortality in this world. Just like the phoenix that gave its origin to you, although it can't be considered to have fallen, the way it exists has changed." King Luan said calmly. "Does Senior Luan mean that there is someone similar to me in this world?" Ning Chen asked. "Whether there is or not, I am not sure. However, the real phoenix has indeed completely disappeared. Perhaps after a long time, a phoenix will appear in this world again. However, the phoenix needs time to be reborn. This time may be 1,000 years, or it may be 10,000 years. Do you understand what I mean?" King Luan said seriously. Hearing this, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. After a long time, he continued, "The spiritual energy in this world is very dense. The power of the phoenix should be extremely strong. Why did it wither to this extent?" The ancient war of gods and demons. King Luan's eyes revealed a trace of nostalgia. He said, "In the ancient times, before the war between the primordial demon realm and the heavens beyond heaven, there was a great war of gods and demons in this realm. The heavenly demon clan and the phoenix clan had different ideologies and a long war broke out. At that time, all the clans were involved. The war lasted for almost 100 years. The heavenly demon clan and the phoenix clan both suffered heavy losses. However, no one would have thought that the final deciding factor of the war would be the internal problems of the phoenix clan." Saying this, King Luan walked down from the high platform. He looked at the floating green stars in the sky and sighed softly. Although the phoenix clan was small in number, each phoenix had the power to destroy the world. Especially the Lord of the Phoenix. He was the strongest cultivator in the primordial secret realm. Unexpectedly, during the most critical period of the war between the two clans, a traitor appeared in the Phoenix clan. A black phoenix took advantage of the opportunity when the Lord of the Phoenix was fighting against the royal cultivators of the heavenly demon clan to launch a sneak attack. The black phoenix severely injured the Lord of the Phoenix. In the end, the Lord of the Phoenix was severely injured and died. A black phoenix? Ning Chen's expression froze. It was hard to believe that there was such an anomaly in the Phoenix clan. That was a variable in the Phoenix clan. When he was born, he was divined by the priests of the Phoenix clan. However, the Lord of the Phoenix was merciful and spared the Black Phoenix. Unexpectedly, the Black Phoenix became the source of disaster for the Phoenix clan and led to the extinction of the Phoenix clan. They completely disappeared from this world. King Luan sighed softly. "What happened after that?" Ning Chen asked. After that, the heavenly demon clan opened the space tunnel between the primordial secret realm and the heavens beyond. That was when the war between the two clans began. I'm sure you know the final result. The heavenly demon clan was defeated and the royal family of the heavenly demon clan was wiped out. The space tunnel between the two clans was sealed and the primordial secret realm was greatly damaged. King Luan said calmly, "What happened to the Black Phoenix?" Ning Chen asked with concern. According to the legends, the Black Phoenix was severely injured by the Lord of the Eastern Celestial World of the Heavens Beyond and almost died. However, no one knows what happened to it. King Luan replied. Ning Chen's expression turned serious again. If that was the case, then it was really troublesome. The inheritance of the Phoenix clan had been broken. Where was he going to find their secret technique? Senior King Wan, is there any possibility of the Phoenix clan's secret technique being left behind? Ningchen looked at the king of the Phoenix clan and asked seriously. Hearing this, King Wan frowned and said, "You received the inheritance of the Phoenix clan. Don't you know their cultivation technique?" Ningchen shook his head and said, "The two phoenixes that gave me their inheritance were restricted by the laws of heaven and earth. They were only in the innate realm. When they gave me their origin energy, they didn't leave behind the cultivation technique of the Phoenix clan." King Wan's eyes narrowed. The innate realm was indeed too weak. For a phoenix to awaken its memories, it had to be at least in the immortal realm or even the mortal realm. The young man in front of him was a human. It was almost impossible for him to awaken his memories. When the Phoenix clan disappeared, the entire primordial secret realm was in the midst of war. Even if the Phoenix clan left behind their secret technique, it was very likely that it was destroyed in the war. However, there are still two places where it might be possible to find it. King Wan's tone was uncertain. Which two places? Ningchen continued to ask. The first is the ancestral land of the Phoenix clan, the Southern Mountain. You possess the origin of the Phoenix clan, so you might be able to discover things that others can't. The other underworld is within the Celestial Devil Imperial clan. Back then, the Phoenix clan was defeated, so some of the Phoenix clan's inheritance might have been obtained by the Celestial Devil Imperial clan. However, this is only my guess. Ningchen nodded and looked at the king in front of him. He bowed respectfully and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior King Wan. I know what to do now." King Wan nodded slightly and said, "Mr. Ning, I would like to make a deal with you. What do you think?" Ning Chen's expression turned serious and said, "Senior King Wan, please speak." Dong Yu and Xia Ji are the two most outstanding juniors of my clan. I would like to gift them to Mr. Ning. King Wan said seriously. Hearing this, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed and his expression turned serious. On the side, Dong Yu and Xia Ji were shocked. They didn't expect their king to suddenly make such a decision. The Phoenix clan and the Wan clan have always been on good terms. In the ancient times, during the war between the Phoenix clan and the Heavenly Demonic clan, the Wan clan suffered heavy losses. Even today, we still haven't recovered. Mr. Ning has the inheritance of the Phoenix clan and is no different from the Phoenix clan. Dong Yu and Xiaji following you isn't a disgrace. In the future, if the Wan clan encounters an unavoidable crisis, I only hope that Mr. Ning can protect us for this sake. King Wan said calmly. Senior King Wan, why do you say this? Ning Chen's expression turned serious. You are a king of the mortal realm and your strength is far above mine. Why do you need to entrust the safety of the Wan clan to an outsider? I am old. King Wan sighed softly and said, although I have tried my best to hold on these years, time is merciless and I don't have much time left. Mr. Ning, you are different. I can feel the burning life force in your body. One day, you will succeed in your atavism and your strength will increase by leaps and bounds. At that time, the glory of the Phoenix clan will reappear in your body. Therefore, I hope that you can agree to this deal, or rather, my request. Ning Chen was silent. After a long time, he looked at the beautiful king of the Wan clan and said softly, Senior King Wan, it's not that I want to refuse. However, the future of the Wan clan shouldn't be entrusted to an outsider and shouldn't be exchanged with the future of the girls. Xiaji and Dong Yu are talented and will definitely be able to carry the hope of the Wan clan's revival. In this world, everyone has their own responsibilities. The rise and fall of the Wan clan shouldn't be shouldered by me. Hearing this, King Wan's eyes darkened. He stared at the young man in front of him. After a long time, he sighed softly and waved his hand. You may leave. Thank you, Senior King Wan. I will take my leave. Ning Chen bowed respectfully and looked at the two girls beside him. He smiled gently and said, Dong Yu, Xiaji, we will meet again if fate wills it. After saying this, Ning Chen didn't say anything else. He turned and walked out of the green rain abyss. Seeing the former leave, Xia Zhi's face flashed with anxiety. King Wan turned and walked up the platform. After 2 steps, he stopped and said calmly, "Now, the 100 clans are selecting generals for the war between the 2 realms. My clan also has 2 spots. If you want to go, go." Hearing this, Xia Zhi's face lit up and she quickly bowed. "Thank you, King." Before she finished speaking, Xia Zhi pulled Dong Yu and hurriedly chased after the figure outside the Green Rain Abyss. Chapter 999. Outside the Qingyu Abyss, Ning Chen had just walked out when Summer Solstice's shout came from behind. "Young Master Ning, wait for us." Hearing the voice behind him, Ning Chen stopped and looked back at Summer Solstice, who was dragging Dong Yu over. He smiled and said, "Slow down. You'll be gone if you're any slower." Summer Solstice's tone was dissatisfied. After complaining, she smiled happily again and said, "My king has agreed for Dong Yu and me to go to the ancient desolate plain together. We're going the same way again." Ning Chen chuckled and said, "What a coincidence. All right, let's go together." Summer Solstice giggled and dragged Dong Yu. As they walked, she said, "I won't give way to you in the 100 clans competition." "All right." Ning Chen smiled and continued, "Let's say goodbye to your mother first and then set off." Summer Solstice nodded. In front of the small river that ran from east to west, the woman was still busy. When she saw the 3 of them return, a gentle smile appeared on her delicate face. "Mother." Summer Solstice trotted forward and hugged the woman's arm. She said sweetly, "We're leaving. My king agreed to let Dong Yu and me participate in the selection of the 100 clans. When the selection is over, we'll be back. Don't worry." The woman smiled and said, "Go ahead. Be careful on the way." Summer Solstice nodded vigorously and shook her fist at the 2 people behind her. Her face was full of happy smiles. Dong Yu walked forward and reached out to hold the woman's hand. She said softly, "Mother, after we leave, you have to take care of yourself. We'll be back soon." The woman smiled and said, "Oh, I'll remember. It's getting late. You should set off early. I'll wait for you at home." Dong Yu nodded reluctantly and looked at Summer Solstice. She said softly, "Let's go." "Mother, we're leaving." Summer Solstice was a little reluctant, a little excited, and a little confused. She said goodbye to her mother for the last time. "Madam, see you later." Ning Chen bowed respectfully and said goodbye. "Mr. Ning, I'll have to trouble you to take care of Dong Yu and Summer Solstice along the way." The woman said softly, "Madam, don't worry. I will." Ning Chen replied, and then he didn't delay any longer before leaving. Xia Zhi and Dong Yu glanced at their mother reluctantly and immediately followed her. In the small courtyard, the woman stood there quietly, not moving for a long time as she watched the 3 figures disappear from her field of vision. In front of Mount Sanwei, the void swirled, and 3 figures walked out. Winter Rain and Summer Solstice both looked back, their eyes flashing with reluctance. "Let's go. Come back early." Ning Chen spoke calmly before he strode forward. Dong Yu and Summer Solstice came back to themselves. They looked at each other and quickly followed him. "Young Master Ning, are we going to the ancient desolate plains now?" Summer Solstice asked on the way. "Let's go to Southern Mountain first," Ning Chen said softly as he looked ahead. "Southern Mountain?" Dong Yu was slightly surprised when he heard this, but he didn't say anything. The time of the 100 clans competition was getting closer and closer. The 3 of them sped up and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The road ahead was filled with mountains, raging rivers, wild beasts, and countless obstacles. However, for the 3 of them who were extremely close to the Red Dust Realm, all obstacles were no longer important. Southern Mountain was the legendary Phoenix ancestral grounds. Since the Phoenix clan was destroyed in the ancient times, the entire Phoenix ancestral grounds had become a forgotten part of history for more than 100,000 years. It was no longer as prosperous as it was in the past. In the 100,000 mountains, there were layers of cliffs and dangerous peaks that isolated the mortal world. It was a legendary place that very few people had set foot in for thousands of years. Half a month later, the three figures appeared in the 100,000 mountains. Looking at the lush forest ahead, their expressions froze slightly. Wait a moment. The road ahead was difficult to find. Ning Chen's footsteps trembled as he rose into the air and arrived above the forest. His gaze swept across the entire forest before he descended again. Follow me. Ning Chen glanced at the two women behind him and said softly before continuing to rush forward. Dong Yu and Summer Solstice followed and disappeared into the depths of the forest in the blink of an eye. Ancient trees coiled around the mountains and rivers. Wild beasts and fierce beasts ran rampant. There were even fierce beasts that had lived for countless years. Their strength was not inferior to the experts of the 100 clans. The three of them didn't attract too much attention. As they passed through, their auras were completely restrained. They didn't want to attract unnecessary trouble. After traveling for a few days, they passed through many mountains and valleys. The three of them had searched almost half of the mountain range, but they still couldn't find the legendary southern mountain. Young Master Ning, did we find the wrong place? After searching for a few days, Summer Solstice was a little impatient and said with an irritated expression. No, it should be nearby. There might be an illusion array or something like that. We haven't been able to find it. Ning Chen's gaze swept across the surrounding mountains and rivers and his eyes narrowed. It seemed that they couldn't be so careful anymore. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to find the Phoenix ancestral grounds in another half a month. Step back a little. Ning Chen glanced at the two women behind him and said softly. Hearing this, Winter Rain and Summer Solstice immediately took a few steps back and made space. Ning Chen pulled out the black saber at his waist. In an instant, an endless fierce aura filled the air. The murderous weapon made from the bones of ancient fierce beasts appeared for the first time. The surrounding area suddenly changed color. An ear-piercing sound of space tearing was heard and the entire 100,000 mountains shook. Wild bone came out. In the depths of the 100,000 mountains, the overlords of fierce beasts opened their eyes and looked at the white-haired figure not far away. Their eyes were filled with ferocity. I'm here to look for something. I don't want to have a conflict with you. However, if you insist on fighting, I'll be happy to oblige. Ning Chen's gaze swept across the powerful fierce beasts in the depths of the mountains and said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura around Ning Chen's body rose to the extreme. An unusually powerful force rushed into the sky. In the swirling wind and snow, the wild bone's saber radiance soared into the sky and slashed down. In the next moment, an earth-shattering tremor was heard. Wherever the black saber radiance passed, the mountains collapsed. The terrifying power shook the entire 100,000 mountains. One slash shocked the heavens and made all living creatures crawl. After the slash, the wild bone in Ning Chen's hand disappeared and returned to its sheath. Found it. Let's go. Ning Chen said before he quickly rushed forward. Behind him, Dong Yu and Summer Solstice looked at the mountains in front of them that had been slashed open. They were shocked. They really didn't expect that young Master Ning's attainments in the saber would be so extraordinary. Behind the mountains, the three figures passed through. Frightened by the power of the previous slash, all the fierce beasts in the 100,000 mountains chose to remain silent. They were unwilling to face such a terrifying expert. In the deepest part of the 100,000 mountains, in the forbidden area surrounded by mountains, the saber radiance cut through layers of obstacles and revealed the true appearance of the forbidden area. In the mountains in the southern corner, in the legendary Phoenix's ancestral land, there were hundreds of huge sycamore trees towering into the clouds. The oldest one was 30 feet thick and its age was immeasurable. The three figures came and stopped in front of the sycamore trees. Summer Solstice glanced around and looked for a long time. She frowned and said, "There's nothing." The Phoenix has disappeared from this world for hundreds of thousands of years. Many people must have come here. If it was so easy to find something, it would have been taken away long ago. Ning Chen looked at the sycamore trees that towered into the clouds and answered. Then how do we find it? Summer Solstice asked with a troubled expression. Let me try. Ning Chen withdrew his mind and shouted softly. He released all his power. In an instant, the sky was filled with endless phoenix fire, engulfing the entire southern corner mountain. After hundreds of thousands of years, the phoenix fire reappeared in the southern corner mountain. The hundreds of sycamore trees immediately recovered. The king of the 100 trees, who was not afraid of the phoenix fire, seemed to feel a familiar aura from a distant era. The branches and leaves swayed and rustled. "Ha!" Ningchen shouted again. In the burning phoenix fire, the phoenix spread its wings and flew out. The huge shadow of the phoenix shook the sky and covered the sun. It was an ancient legend again. The appearance of the phoenix shocked the entire 100,000 mountains. The fierce beasts trembled violently and roared in a low voice. They were unwilling to submit. However, the pressure that came from the depths of their blood made all resistance pale. The hundreds of beasts prostrated themselves and their bodies trembled involuntarily. In the flames, the hundreds of divine sycamore trees swayed even more violently. The king of the trees seemed to have a spirit. They shouted to welcome the return of the phoenix. "Ancestors of the Phoenix clan, I, Ningchen, need your help." Under the sycamore trees, Ningchen bowed respectfully and said sincerely. As soon as he finished speaking, the surroundings were silent. In the endless flames, there was only the sound of the hundreds of king of the trees swaying. There was no other movement. Ningchen straightened up and looked around. His expression turned solemn. In the flames, the phoenix flapped its wings. The powerful origin of the phoenix filled the 100,000 mountains. All the beasts bowed and did not dare to get up. 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Time passed slowly. Under the sycamore trees, the white-clothed figure still stood quietly and did not leave. Not far away, winter rain and summer solstice waited quietly. They did not dare to make a sound. After waiting for a long time, under the hundreds of king of the sycamore trees, an unusually powerful pressure suddenly rose. The immortal fighting soul from the ancient era appeared again. It was only for a moment, but it was so clear. "Young Phoenix, you're finally here." Among the dozens of fighting souls, an illusory figure gradually appeared. His appearance could not be seen clearly. Time was merciless and had erased too much of his reality. Around him, the dozens of fighting souls of the Phoenix clan bowed to the sovereign in the middle. Then, they turned into stars and disappeared again. From the beginning to the end, they did not say a word. "I'm the Phoenix Master." In the flames, the illusory figure looked at the white-clothed figure in front of him and said calmly. When the Phoenix Master appeared, the king of the trees shook violently and bowed to the sovereign of the Phoenix clan. Ningchen looked at the Phoenix Master in front of him and bowed without saying anything. The Phoenix Master glanced at the entire Phoenix ancestral land and sighed softly. "Everything is different now." After sighing, the Phoenix Master looked back at the young junior in front of him and asked, "What do you want?" The Phoenix clan's secret technique. Ningchen straightened up and looked at the sovereign of the Phoenix clan in front of him. He did not hide anything and said directly. Chapter 1000. In the depths of the 100,000 mountains, in the Phoenix's ancestral land, the Phoenix Master appeared. He was just a remnant soul, but his pressure was unprecedentedly powerful, causing people and gods to fear him. Facing the Emperor of the Phoenixes, Ningchen spoke frankly without hiding anything. When the Phoenix Master heard this, he looked at the young junior in front of him as if he wanted to see through him completely. They looked at each other without giving in. Ningchen and the Phoenix Master looked at each other. Their calm eyes had their own thoughts. After staring at each other for a long time, the Phoenix Master finally said calmly, "The inheritance of the Phoenixes is different from other races. If you want to obtain the inheritance of the Phoenixes, you must obtain the Phoenix's soul imprint. I'm already dead, so I can't teach you." When Ningchen heard this, he frowned and asked, "How can I obtain the Phoenix's soul imprint?" "There are two ways," the Phoenix Master said calmly. "The heavenly demon imperial family has the Phoenix clan's fighting soul, so you can take it. The other way is to find the Black Phoenix. Other than that, there's no other way." Hearing the Phoenix Master's words, Ningchen narrowed his eyes slightly. There was really no such thing as a free lunch in the world. These two methods were each more difficult than the other. Needless to say, the Heavenly Demon Clan was the most powerful race in the primitive secret realm. Its imperial family was so powerful that they shocked the powerhouses of the 100 races. Compared to the Heavenly Demon Clan, the Black Phoenix was alone. However, as a powerhouse who could launch a sneak attack and seriously injure the Phoenix Master, one could imagine how terrifying his strength was. After thinking for a long time, Ningchen collected his thoughts and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior Phoenix Master. I know what to do." The Phoenix Master looked at the young man, who had quickly calmed down, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. It was rare to see a junior who was neither arrogant nor impatient. "Young man, aren't you disappointed?" The Phoenix Master's expression became gentle as he asked. Ningchen smiled and said, "I'm indeed disappointed, but I'm already mentally prepared. After all, it's abnormal for me to obtain the Phoenix Clan's secret technique so easily." The Phoenix Master nodded and said, "It's not a bad thing for a young man to experience more hardships. The Phoenix Clan's secret technique is the strongest combat technique in the world. I hope that one day, you can take back the inheritance of our clan and restore its glory." Ningchen looked at the ruler of the Phoenixes in front of him and asked with a smile, "Senior Phoenix Master, it's not easy to restore the Phoenix's glory. Even if you can't teach me the Phoenix's secret techniques, don't you have anything else that you can leave for me, a junior?" When the Phoenix Master heard this, she was stunned for a moment. Not far away, when Winter Rain and Summer Solstice heard the former's words, their hearts skipped a beat, and their expressions became very interesting. "Ha!" Under the Wutong King tree, the Phoenix head laughed out loud. It was as if that was really the case. He only left the junior with the responsibility. If he didn't give him some benefits, then it wouldn't make sense. "I only have a wisp of remnant soul left, so I can't give you much. Since you've already brought it up, I can't be stingy. I'll give you a law, the sovereign law." As soon as she finished speaking, the Phoenix Master raised her hand. In an instant, endless power of laws gathered in the surroundings. The might of an emperor was revealed, and the world was under her command. The Wutong King tree shook and leaves flew everywhere. Between the two of them, a golden lightning bolt appeared and entered the former's body. Ningchen's divine sense swept across his qi, and his eyes narrowed slightly. "What's this?" "The law in your body is the power of laws that I comprehended when I became an emperor. I'll give it to you now. However, this law isn't your own power after all. Once you use it, you'll suffer great losses. Do you understand?" The Phoenix Master said seriously. "Yes." Ningchen nodded and bowed respectfully again. "Thank you, Senior Phoenix Master." The Phoenix Master smiled and looked into the distance. "All right, my mission has been completed. Now, it's time to meet some old friends." As soon as she finished speaking, spiritual qi gathered between heaven and earth. The Phoenix Master's illusory figure began to solidify, and an incomparably terrifying power spread out. In an instant, a peerless powerhouse wearing a purple robe and a crown walked out. The Emperor of the Phoenixes had reappeared. With a step forward, heaven and earth shrank. With a terrifying speed that surpassed the law of space, the Emperor's figure disappeared without a trace. In the next moment, an endless distance away, in the primordial demon territory, the Phoenix Master wearing a purple robe and a crown walked out. Multicolored light rose around his body, and he looked down on the world, shocking the kings of the demon territory. "It's him, Phoenix Master. He's still alive." In the demon territory, a king with a terrifying aura opened his eyes and looked into the sky with a shocked expression. "No, it's impossible for the Phoenix Master to still be alive. This should be just a remnant soul." Another powerful king said in a serious tone. "That's the Phoenix Master." A third king said in a deep voice, "Even if it's just a remnant soul, we can't fight against him. There's no need to die with him at this time." The kings nodded. At this moment, in the depths of the demon territory, a terrifying aura that surpassed the kings awakened. The old eyes opened and looked at the Phoenix Master in the void. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. "Seven Brilliance Demon Emperor, how have you been?" In the void, The Phoenix Master looked at the old figure in the depths of the primordial demon territory and said coldly, "Phoenix Master, I didn't expect to see an old friend again after so many years." In the depths of the demon territory, an old voice sounded. "Where's the 8 Desolation Demon Emperor? Has he fallen?" The Phoenix Master's lips curled into a cold smile. "Sorry to disappoint you. I'm doing very well." At this moment, in the depths of the primordial demon territory, another extremely powerful aura awakened. It was ancient and terrifying, as if it came from the ancient times. 7 brilliance, 8 desolation. Very well. Since both of you are here, I didn't come here in vain. The Phoenix Master sneered and took a step forward. The aura around him shot into the clouds. Endless mist floated up and down, isolating the law of time. The terrifying emperor in the endless light suppressed the 9 heavens and looked down on the 10 lands. The invincible Phoenix Master of the ancient times once again displayed his peerless imperial might. He raised his hand and slammed it into the depths of the primordial demon territory. The imperial might descended. In an earth-shattering tremor, the entire primordial demon territory collapsed. The ground cracked, and dust covered the sun. Just as the Phoenix Master was descending on the primordial demon territory, 3 people walked out of the 100,000 mountains. In front of the mountain range, Ning Chen stopped. Red light rose around his body. The phoenix body formed and separated from his main body. "I have to go back as soon as possible. I'll leave this place to you," the phoenix body said calmly. "Okay." Ning Chen nodded. "Pay attention to the black phoenix. He may be hiding in the sky beyond sky." "Understood." The phoenix body responded. Without another word, he disappeared in a flash. Behind him, Dong Yu and Summer Solstice watched the phoenix body leave. Confusion flashed across their eyes. "Mr. Ning, why did you let the phoenix body leave? Isn't that one of your clones? If it leaves, your cultivation will be affected. It will not be good for the competition of the 100 kinds." Summer Solstice reminded him out of kindness. "It's okay." Ning Chen chuckled. "He has his own responsibilities. He can't leave for long. Let's go. It's getting late. We have to hurry." With that, Ning Chen smiled faintly and walked forward. Hearing this, Dong Yu and Summer Solstice didn't ask more and quickly followed. After a few days of traveling, chariots could be seen in the sky above the barren land. The heavens' favorites from the 100 kinds had all left and were heading towards the ancient barren land. Along the way, Ning Chen led Dong Yu and Summer Solstice forward. Along the way, they met many young heavens' favorites from the 100 kinds. The most powerful one was extremely close to the mortal realm. In the glorious era, there were many heavens' favorites from the 100 kinds. Jin Lin, from the Scaled clan, Hong Yuan from the Golden Lion clan, Song Ming from the Howling Moon clan. Many young powerhouses were famous and were known to have the potential to become emperors. There were even rumors that some of the young powerhouses of this generation had already entered the mortal realm. After becoming an immortal, one would return to the mortal realm and return to the mortal realm. If one didn't enter this realm, then no matter how monstrous a genius was, their Tao would be nothing but a dream. At the end of the barren land, the ancient city of Jueong was a majestic sight. Even in the primitive demon realm, it was one of the few ancient cities. Half a month later, Ning Chen and the others arrived at the majestic city. The city walls were over 100 feet tall, completely constructed from gold and stone. Under the blazing sun, they emitted a dazzling light. Even after so many years, the ancient city still stood strong, towering over the eastern continent of the primal devil realm. "We're here, the ancient city of Jueong." Xiaji's eyes were filled with excitement when she saw the words carved on the city walls. "Young master, Dong Yu, let's go in quickly. It's my first time here." Ning Chen chuckled and nodded before continuing to walk forward. The 3 of them walked into the ancient city. As soon as they entered the city, they immediately felt a powerful pressure. Waves of terrifying auras were faintly discernible in the city. They couldn't sense the specific direction, but they were clearly there. Ning Chen looked ahead and narrowed his eyes. King Realm. There was at least one King Realm expert in this city. as expected of a city that one had to pass through on their way to the east. With a king realm expert in charge, even the heavens' favorites didn't dare to cause trouble. Boom! At this moment, a war chariot flew across the sky. A powerful aura pressed down. The aura was infinitely close to the mortal realm. It was powerful and domineering. While everyone was still in shock, a woman covered in blood fell from the sky and crashed into the city with a thump. On the war chariot in the sky, a young man covered in armor stood. His eyes were cold, and he held a battle record in his hand. He was extraordinarily handsome. Aeolai. In the city, the young experts were all shocked when they saw the figure in the sky. The peerless genius of the Peng clan had actually arrived so quickly. Below, the woman coughed violently. Blood dyed the dust in front of her, and the white wings on her back were dyed red. It was extremely miserable. "It's someone from the Egret clan," she exclaimed when she saw the wings on the woman's back. On the side, Dong Yu's expression became serious. The heavenly Peng fed on hundreds of birds. Fortunately, the woman had escaped into the city and saved her life. Before she could finish her thoughts, a shocking scene occurred in front of her. On the war chariot, a cold smile flashed on the young man's face. He waved his halberd, and a huge heavenly Peng appeared behind him. The Peng opened its mouth and swallowed the woman below. Chapter 1001. In Jueyang Ancient City, the peerless prodigy of the Heavenly Rock clan revealed his ferocious might. His evil face appeared and swallowed the girl from the Egret clan. It was a shocking scene. Everyone's eyes trembled violently. They couldn't recover from their shock for a while. Everyone knew how overbearing the Heavenly Rock clan was. However, this was Jueyang Ancient City, where killing was not allowed. The peerless prodigy of the Heavenly Rock clan actually dared to act so arrogantly. The blood on the ground told of how cruel the scene was. Eating a living person alive was heart-wrenching. Below, Ningchen looked at this scene with a hint of coldness in his calm eyes. The grudges of the 100 clans had nothing to do with him. However, this young man from the Heavenly Rock clan had gone too far. He's too arrogant. At the side, Summer Solstice was furious. Eating other clans in broad daylight? Was there any law left? Dong Yu heard this and hurriedly reached out to pull the former. The Heavenly Rock clan was their natural enemy. During the ancient war of the 100 clans, many experts from the Wan clan had died in the hands of the Heavenly Rock clan. Other than the Phoenix, no other clan could match the speed of the Heavenly Rock clan. This was also why the Heavenly Rock clan dared to be so arrogant. In the sky, on the chariot, Aeolai looked down and slowly descended. Seeing this, everyone moved aside. No one wanted to provoke him at this time. Aeolai walked forward step by step through the path that everyone had opened. The coldness in his eyes was bone-chilling. Behind everyone, Summer Solstice felt a chill rise around her. The fear that came from the depths of her bloodline made it difficult for her to move. Dong Yu immediately pulled Summer Solstice behind her and was on full alert. "Who said those words just now?" Aeolai stopped, looked at the two girls, and said indifferently, "I said it." Dong Yu stood in front of Summer Solstice and said in a deep voice, "Very good." Aeolai raised his hand. Instantly, a terrifying aura rose again. The phantom of the Heavenly Rock appeared, its ferocious might shaking the sky. Dong Yu's eyes narrowed. She pulled Summer Solstice and immediately retreated. However, the Heavenly Rock was extremely fast. There was no way to avoid it. The phantom devoured the sky and swallowed the two girls. "Your Excellency Sky Rock, these two ladies are my servant girls. If you want to touch them, have you asked for my permission?" As she spoke, Bai Yi's figure flashed. She raised her hand and blocked the Heavenly Rock evil avatar. The drifting frost was exceptionally beautiful. The ice and snow condensed into a barrier, blocking all wind and rain. No one could take half a step past it. Aeolai looked at the young man in front of him, his expression cold. He clenched his right hand, and the green halberd flew out from the war chariot behind him. With a rumble, the ferocious halberd broke through the wind and snow. Its power did not diminish as it continued to slash towards the white-clothed figure. The ferocious halberd was overbearing and all-conquering. Behind him, Dong Yu and Xia Zhi's expressions changed as they cried out in alarm. In front of the two, Ning Chen frowned slightly. He didn't dodge or evade. Instead, he raised his left hand and took the halberd head-on. The wind and snow continued to spread, and the ground shook violently. Under Ning Chen's feet, the ground continued to crack, and the cracks continued to spread for thousands of feet. Your Excellency, Sky Rock, where it is possible to let people off, one should spare them. Is that enough? Ning Chen said coldly as he gripped his ferocious halberd and looked at the peerless genius of the Tianping race who was close by. Since you dare to stand in my way, you should be prepared to bear the consequences. Ao Lai coldly said. He turned his palm and formed a claw. A ferocious light tore through the air. Ning Chen's eyes became even colder. He still didn't dodge or evade. Instead, he met the claw with a heavy punch. There was a loud rumble and the shockwaves shook the area. Those with weaker bodies were immediately forced back several feet, their blood tumbling violently in their bodies. Dong Yu, Xia Zhi, step back a little. Ning Chen's patience had been exhausted after giving in for 2 moves. He opened his mouth to speak. The 2 women heard this and immediately retreated, temporarily withdrawing from the battle. Seeing the 2 women leave the battle, Ning Chen looked at the man in front of him, killing intent flashing in his eyes. He had never been a patient person, but the person in front of him had aroused his killing intent. Feeling the killing intent from the former, the killing intent in Ao Lai's eyes became even thicker. With a loud shout, the Tianping evil face reared back and screeched. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He loosened his hands and his figure flashed, avoiding the evil face's attack. You think you can avoid it? Ao Lai coldly snorted. He stepped forwards and instantly rushed forward. The ferocious halberd pierced through the air, tearing the heavens and the earth apart. Facing the ferocious Tianping race's peerless genius, Ning Chen used strange footwork. His figure flashed, avoiding one killing move after another. After a while, 10 moves had passed. Ao Lai's eyes became even more ruthless. His attacks were like a storm, each more ruthless than the last. Amidst the violent halberd light, Ning Chen suddenly stopped. He clenched his right hand, and in an instant, wild bone was unsheathed. The black saber was soul-stirring. The stunning saber cut through the wind and rain, shocking the world. The black saber was about to fall, and the heavens and earth shook. At this moment, a golden light flashed in the distance. In the blink of an eye, she had arrived in the battle. She raised her delicate hand and blocked the black saber. What entered their eyes was a peerless beauty. She was dressed in golden divine clothes. Her eyes were like autumn water, and her face was like peach blossoms. She was beautiful and refined. With just a glance, it was difficult to look away. Jean Lin. Many of the people present recognized the woman's identity and exclaimed in shock. Among the 100 clans, there were a few special clans with sovereigns overseeing them. Their strength was terrifying. The Scaled clan was one of them. The Scaled clan was known to have the best defense among the 100 clans. Every Scaled clan powerhouse was very powerful, and they rarely met a match in the same realm. The woman in front of them was the granddaughter of the current Scaled emperor. Her bloodline was extremely pure, and she was known as the person most likely to become a sovereign in this generation. Jean Lin made her move, and the situation of the battle changed instantly. Killing intent flashed in Ning Chen's eyes. A member of the Scaled clan. He was no stranger to the Scaled clan. They were the first to bring the flames of war to the Divine Land. Therefore, he did not have a good impression of this clan. Feeling the killing intent from the young man in front of her, Jean Lin frowned slightly. Did she see wrongly just now? Why did this person have such a strong killing intent toward her? Jean Lin, aren't you meddling too much? Ao Lai looked at the woman in front of him. A gloomy expression flashed across his cold face. Jean Lin turned around and looked at the man behind her. She said indifferently, "This is Jueyang Ancient City, not your rock clan. If you don't want to make King Jueyang unhappy, you'd better restrain yourself." When Ao Lai heard this, his expression darkened again. After a moment, he withdrew his aura and turned to leave. Dong Yu, Xia Ji, let's go too. In front, Ning Chen glanced at the two women not far away and said calmly. He then walked in another direction. Young master, please wait. Jean Lin said. Hearing the woman's voice, Ning Chen stopped and said calmly, Miss, what can I do for you? It's fate that we met. May I know your name? Jean Lin asked in a serious voice. I'm just a country bumpkin. There's no need for you to worry. We'll meet again, Ning Chen said indifferently. He did not stay any longer and walked forward. Dong Yu and Xia Ji looked at each other and followed. Their young master's attitude seemed a little strange. Behind them, Jean Lin watched the three of them leave. Her beautiful eyes flashed. Something was not right. This person was indeed hostile toward her. Young master. On the streets of the city, Xia Ji carefully pulled the sleeve of the person next to her and whispered, Are you okay? I'm fine. Ning Chen's face showed gentleness again. He said, Let's find a place to rest for the night and continue our journey tomorrow. The two women nodded and agreed softly. In the west of the city, in a bustling inn, the three of them asked for 2 rooms to stay temporarily. Night fell and the entire ancient city gradually quieted down. In front of the window, Ning Chen stood quietly and looked at the dark clouds in the ancient city. His calm eyes flashed with brilliance. He had promised King Shuri that he would help King Shuri City win first place in this 100-clan competition and obtain the Yin Yang Non-Jade. He did not care about King Shuri's purpose. What he valued more in this deal was the background of King Shuri City. He needed a new identity. Shuri Imperial City was remote and not easy to be noticed by other big clans. It was the most suitable choice for the time being. The more one knew about the strength of the 100 clans, the more shocking it was. Whether it was the number of masters or the potential of the younger generation, it was not something that the inner world and the human realm upon heavens could compare to. Today, it was only their first day in Jueyang Ancient City and they had already met 2 peerless geniuses of the 100 clans. Especially that Jean Lin, whose cultivation was unfathomable, would be a great enemy in the future. In the next room, Xia Ji sat on the bed and kicked the bed back and forth with her white legs. She said in boredom, Dong Yu, what do you think happened to the young master today? He's so scary. I don't know. Dong Yu's expression turned serious. His attitude towards Jean Lin seems a bit abnormal. Young Master Ning has always been kind to people. If there is no grudge, he shouldn't be so cold. That's right. That Jean Lin is so beautiful. Even I envy her. Xia Ji pouted and said, But speaking of which, the young master saved us again today. That Ao Lai is so annoying. The Tianpan clan likes to eat blood. We are at a disadvantage against him. We should be more careful in the future, Dong Yu reminded softly. It's okay. The young master is here. Xia Ji giggled. Don't mess around. Dong Yu reprimanded softly. Young Master Ning can't always protect us. Also, don't let the matter of the young master slip. Otherwise, it will bring trouble to him. Xia Ji nodded and replied. She knew that phoenixes were a taboo in the primordial demon realm, especially for the Tian demon clan. If they knew that young Master Ning had the phoenix origin, they would definitely make a big fuss. All right, let's rest early. We'll set off early tomorrow morning. Dong Yu said softly, then walked to the side and blew out the candle flame. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, when the sky was about to brighten, the plain-clothed figure standing by the window collected his thoughts and walked to the door, ready to call the 2 girls to set off. In the next room, the door creaked open. Xia Ji walked out while rubbing her eyes. Seeing the figure in front of the room next door, she said in a daze, Good morning, young master. Pack up and get ready to set off. Ning Chen said with a smile. Xia Ji replied softly. Just as she was about to turn and return to her room, she suddenly paused. Young master, the king of absolute Yang invites you. As they spoke, a black-clothed figure walked out from behind the 2. He looked at the plain-clothed young man and said respectfully, Chapter 1002. Lotus flowers bloomed all over the surface of the lake in King Ju-yang's palace. The fragrance of the flowers drifted in the air. The king had set up a banquet by the lake. Jin Lin of the Scale clan, Ao Lai of the Rock clan, and Song Ming of the Howling Moon clan were all present. Even the prodigies of the 100 clans did not dare to neglect the invitation of King Ju-yang and came on time. The banquet was about to begin. At this moment, a plain-clothed figure walked over. 2 women followed behind him. They were half a step behind and did not overtake him. "He's here." When the young geniuses from the 100 clans saw the newcomer, their expressions froze. They had already heard of the battle in the city earlier. The young man before them had actually fought to a draw with the supreme genius of the Rock clan. This battle record was truly shocking. The Sky Rock clan was the top king clan among the 100 clans. The current King Rock's strength was infinitely close to that of an emperor. There were rumors that the King Rock would be able to break through the King Realm's shackles soon and become an emperor. Regardless of whether the rumors were true or false, the Sky Rock clan was undoubtedly powerful. In the same realm, the Sky Rock clan had a huge advantage in speed. Other than a few clans with royal bloodlines, almost no other clans could compete with them. Although the cultivation of the young man in front of them could not be seen clearly, he was definitely not a Red Dust Realm expert. He was only in the Ascending Immortal Realm, but he was able to tie with the Rock clan's prodigy. This showed how terrifying his combat strength was. When Ningchen arrived, all the guests had arrived. At this moment, rays of light gathered in front of the main seat. An extremely powerful aura walked out. Auspicious lights flowed around him. The aura of a king suppressed the entire place. "Greetings, King Ju-yang." Everyone stood up and bowed respectfully to the man in front of the main seat. "No need to be so courteous. Please sit," King Ju-yang said calmly. He sat down and withdrew his powerful cultivation. However, even so, his imposing aura still gave the prodigies of the younger generation an indescribable pressure. Everyone is passing by Ju-yang City. As the host, I have specially invited all of you to come and play host. King Ju-yang looked at the prodigies below and smiled. "You're too polite, King Ju-yang." The leader of the group, Jin Lin, smiled and replied, "It should be us who have come to greet King Ju-yang." "Niece, you're too courteous. Your father and I have been friends for a long time. I've always wanted to pay a visit to the Scaled tribe. Unfortunately, I've been busy and never had the chance to do so. Now that you've come to my city, I naturally have to receive you well." The king of Jueyang smiled as he looked at the Scaled tribe prodigy leading the crowd below. "Many thanks to King Jueyang. Before I left, my royal father specially instructed me to send my regards to King Jueyang," Jin Lin said with a smile. The two of them exchanged pleasantries. Below them, Xiaji felt dizzy listening to them. She secretly tugged at the clothes of the person beside her and whispered, "Young master, is the Scaled clan and Jueyang ancient city that close?" Ningchen smiled and sent a voice transmission, "Do you know what it means to be a spiritual friend for a long time?" Xiaji shook her head and said honestly, "I don't know. It's just that we've never met before." Ningchen chuckled and said, "Just listen to the words of these 2 people. However, you don't have to believe a single word they say." Xiaji was surprised and immediately nodded obediently. On the opposite side of the seat, Ao Lai stared coldly at the plain-clothed young man in front of him. He did not hide his killing intent at all. As long as he left Jueyang City, he would definitely let this person know what it meant to be better off dead. Ningchen felt the killing intent from the opposite side, but his expression was calm and he did not care at all. He had experienced too many of such gazes. It did not matter if there was one more or one less. How annoying! Xiaji muttered in her heart but did not say anything. She did not want to cause trouble for her young master, so she only cursed this person in her heart. "King Jueyang, I'll give you a toast." Behind Jin Lin, a young man in green stood up and said respectfully, "You're too courteous. Please." The king of Jueyang picked up his wine cup and smiled. "Who is this person?" Ningchen asked Dong Yu, who was beside him. "Song Ming, the young master of the Howling Moon clan." "What's wrong?" Dong Yu was puzzled. "Nothing." Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "This person is very strong. He's not inferior to Ao Lai of the Rock Clan. He's even stronger than him." Dong Yu was surprised when she heard that. The young master of the Howling Moon clan was the most low-key person among the big clans. He rarely took action. How did her young master know? After Tsang Ming, the sky prides of the 100 clans stood up one by one to give a toast. The king of Jueong also responded with a smile on his face. He looked very gentle. When it was Ao Lai's turn, everyone looked over. The peerless sky pride of the Sky Rock clan had eaten a lady of the Egret clan as soon as he entered the city. He was extremely arrogant and no one knew what the king of Jueong's attitude would be. Ao Lai stood up and bowed to the king of Jueong with a wine cup in his hand. Junior Ao Lai gives a toast to the king of Jueong. "I was hungry earlier and ate some food in the city. I've lost my manners and embarrassed myself in front of the king of Jueong." As soon as he said that, everyone was surprised. The peerless sky pride of the Sky Rock clan actually admitted his mistake. It was really unexpected. "Nephew, you don't have to worry about it. However, this kind of thing shouldn't happen again in the future. After all, nephew, you are a member of the royal clan. You still have to abide by the rules of eating." The king of Jueong revealed a smile that no one could understand. After replying, he drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. "Thank you for your magnanimity, king of Jueong. I will pay attention in the future." Ao Lai nodded and raised his cup with both hands. He drank the wine and sat down again. Behind the seats, Ning Chen watched this scene quietly. The corner of his mouth curved into a cold arc. A lady of the Egret clan was settled with just a cup of wine. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, life was indeed the most worthless thing. This peerless sky pride of the Sky Rock clan was not as reckless as he looked on the surface. As for the king of Jueong, he was not as magnanimous and gentle as he looked. A simple cup of wine contained too many things. When the wine cup was put down, the past was gone. The sky prides of the various clans regained their senses and threw this matter to the back of their minds. The sky prides of the various clans stood up one after another and toasted the king of Jueong, who represented power and strength. The last person was Ning Chen, who was seated at the end of the seats. He had never heard of him before. Everyone present was rather curious about his identity. "This junior is Ning Chen from Sunrise Royal City. A toast to the king of Jueong." Ning Chen stood up, raised his cup and said calmly, "Sunrise Royal City?" When everyone heard this, their expressions froze. Sunrise Royal City had a young lord named Yu Yao. It was rumored that he was an expert of the sword. The young man before them was clearly not one. "Nephew, you are from Sunrise Royal City? May I know who your master is?" The king of Jueong looked at the young man below and asked. "I don't have a master." Ning Chen said calmly, "I was just lucky to obtain some arts. I have been cultivating until now, but they are not presentable." When the king of Jueong heard this, he smiled and did not ask any further. He drank the wine in his cup. Ning Chen drank the wine in one gulp as well and sat down quietly. After everyone had given their toasts, Jin Lin looked at the king on the main seat and said, "It is rumored that the king of Jueong has an only son who has extraordinary attainments in the sword. May I know if he is still in the city? Rumors are not to be trusted. My son has not left yet. However, I have invited all of you to a banquet today. It is better for my son not to join us." The king of despair said with a smile. "The king of Jueong is too humble. I have met Gu Xen once. His sword is still deeply engraved in my memory." Behind Jin Lin, the young man in green said calmly. When Jin Lin, Ao Lai and the rest heard Song Ming's words, a strange look flashed across their eyes. It seemed like this person was not simple to be praised by the young lord of Howling Moon Clan. "If that is the case, why don't you let brother Gu Xian join us as well? Let us witness the glory of the king of Jueong Royal City's young lord." Ao Lai said calmly. The king of Jueong looked at everyone's eyes. After a while, he smiled and said, "Since everyone has praised me, I shall call my son here to broaden my horizons." After speaking, the king of Jueong looked at the maid standing behind him and said calmly, "Call Gu Xen here." The maid accepted the order and left immediately. Have you heard of Guexin? Ning Chen looked at the two girls beside him and asked. Dong Yu shook her head and replied. Neither have I. Xia Ji wiped her oily mouth and shook her head vigorously. Ning Chen nodded. Just as he was about to speak, his expression froze and he looked into the distance. At the end of the water moon lake, there was a sharp radiance. It was like a peerless divine weapon that was born. It was cold and sharp. The sword aura spread and waves appeared on the surface of the lake. The sword at the peak resonated with the heavens and earth. Feeling the sword aura from the distance, Ning Chen's expression became serious for the first time. Such a pure sword. After being in the primal secret realm for so long, this was the first time he had met a pure sword cultivator. Using a sword was completely different from cultivating it. Cultivators of the sword, such as Mu Bai from Desolate City and Yen Qin Wang, were the purest experts of the sword. In comparison, Mu Qingxue and Xia Zi used the sword more as a tool and sharpness rather than cultivating it. Although the young lord of Jueyang City had not shown himself yet, the aura from his sword already showed that he was a peak sword cultivator. An extraordinary sword cultivator. Jean Lin also felt the sword pressure from the distance. Her gaze froze as she spoke softly. As soon as he finished speaking, a crimson figure walked over from the end of the water moon lake. He held a cold sword in his hand and had a jade-like face. His overly delicate face seemed a little feminine, giving off an indescribable sense of incongruity. Seeing this person, Ning Chen frowned slightly. This young lord of Jueyang City made him think of someone. Back then Yin Wugo of the Tyli division, a killing tool that had been cleansed. Greetings, father. Gu Exin walked to the center of the table and bowed respectfully to the man on the main seat. Gu Exin, these are the geniuses of the various clans. Father has called you here to broaden your horizons. Take a seat first, King Jueyang said with a smile from the main seat. Thank you, father. Gu Exin bowed once again and walked towards the end of the seats. The seats faced each other. Gu Exin's footsteps paused as he looked at the plain-clothed young man on the opposite seat. His eyes narrowed slightly. This person was very strong. Chapter 1003. At the lakeside of the Water Moon Lake in the Absolute Yang Royal Residence, the Absolute Yang Royal Residence invited the outstanding talents of the 100 races. Gu Exin was invited, and his sword intent shocked everyone. After bowing, Gu Exin took his seat. Unintentionally, his gaze swept across the other side, and his expression froze. Their gazes were equally calm. After a while, Gu Exin withdrew his gaze and walked back to his seat. This plain-clothed youth was a true expert. Gu Exin took his seat, and Ning Chen's gaze moved away from the former. He smiled and picked up his wine cup, taking a sip. It looked like the competition between the 100 races would not be too peaceful this time. On the main seat, the Absolute Yang Royal Residence looked at his only son at the end of the table and smiled. Gu Exin, why are you still not toasting to the friends of the various races? Gu Exin stood up and immediately raised his wine cup, toasting to the outstanding talents of the various races present. The young experts of the various races at the table stood up and politely responded. After finishing the wine, Gu Exin looked at Ao Lai, who was not far away, and said, "How about we have a spar, young master of the rock race?" The moment Gu Exin said that, everyone showed a strange expression. They shifted their gazes and looked at the Absolute Yang Royal Residence on the main seat. Could it be that this was instructed by the Absolute Yang Royal Residence? Seeing everyone look over, the Absolute Yang Royal Residence's expression sank. He looked at his only son at the end of the table and reprimanded, "Gu Exin, don't be rude. How can you use force at the banquet and ruin everyone's mood? Just sparring to liven things up." Then he looked at Ao Lai at the side and said, "I believe that the rock race young master will not refuse, right?" Although his provocative words were calm, they did not allow for rejection. A cold light flashed in Ao Lai's eyes. He stood up and said, "I'll be happy to accompany you." Both sides expressed their stances, and the atmosphere immediately turned tense. On the main seat, The absolute young royal residence's expression turned increasingly gloomy, but he did not say anything to stop them. When the two arrived, Gu Xian looked at the person in front of him. His lips curled up in a strange smile as he said, "Please." Ao Lai waved his hand, and a halberd appeared in the surging airflow. Baleful chi spread out, driving people crazy. "Please." After saying that, Ao Lai moved. In the blink of an eye, the halberd was Gu Xian. Gu Xian raised his hand and welcomed the attack with his ancient sword. The sword was not out of its scabbard, but the sword chi was self-generated. With a bang, the scabbard blocked the halberd. The air around the two of them shook and spread to the banquet. Among the seats, the paragons of the 100 races pressed their hands on the table one after another. Their auras spread and blocked the aftershocks. In the battle, after one move, Ao Lai turned his palm and clawed at the former. Gu Xian leaned to the side and avoided the sharp claws. He formed a sword with his fingers and attacked back forcefully. In close combat, every move was fast and dangerous. Both of them were rarely seen experts in the world. Their moves were incomparably swift and fierce and abnormally domineering. The desolate halberd danced, earth-shattering and earth-shattering. His sword finger-pointed. The sharpness of his sword was oppressive. The two silhouettes constantly intertwined, halberd light and sword chi crisscrossing. Being in the king's mansion of Juyang, the two's martial arts were suppressed by more than half, so they won with moves. They were of the same level, but their battle tactics were completely different. Seated at the banquet, the young sky prides watched the battle between the two with solemn expressions. Both of them were at the peak of the treading celestial stage and were only a step away from the red dust stage. In terms of cultivation, it was hard to say who was stronger or weaker, but in many cases, true combat strength was not absolutely related to cultivation. After exchanging several moves, clanging sounds rang out incessantly. It seemed like a battle of equals, but Gu Xian never drew his ancient sword. On both sides of the banquet, the young sky prides of the various races also noticed this. Their expressions turned serious. A swordsman who had yet to draw his sword was already so capable. Once he drew his sword, just how strong would he be? On the main seat, King Jueyang watched the battle below. His expression returned to normal. From start to finish, he did not say a single word. In the battle, as the battle progressed, Ao Lai's expression turned darker and darker. His halberd tore through the air, and his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Amidst the storm-like attacks, Gu Xian's figure constantly moved, dodging wave after wave of attacks. He looked ahead, waiting for a chance to counterattack. Unable to take it down after a long time, Ao Lai's patience was running out. He took a step forward, and the heavenly Peng evil avatar appeared behind him. The sudden increase in speed and power caused ripples to spread out. The water in Water Moon Lake surged like a waterfall. Seeing this, Gu Xian's lips turned cold. He swung his ancient sword, and in that instant, an incomparably cold aura spread out. The entire Water Moon Lake instantly froze over. The ancient sword was drawn, and the cold aura did not spread out. Wherever the sword aura passed, the world turned to ice. This is... On the main seat, Jean Lin Er's expression changed when she saw this. She exclaimed, "Moon Sword!" Moon Sword and Sun Sword were two divine weapons that had been lost in the primordial demon realm for a long time. Unexpectedly, one of them was actually in King Jueyang City. Once Moon Sword was drawn, the situation of the battle changed. Under the extreme cold, Ao Lai felt the aura around him become sluggish. His expression sank, and his cultivation erupted. On the main seat, King Jueyang immediately stood up. He opened his hands, and an incomparably powerful aura spread out, limiting the shockwaves of the battle to a radius of 30 meters. With King Jueyang making a move, everyone present heaved a sigh of relief and watched the battle with peace of mind. In the battle, Ao Lai was the first to erupt with his cultivation. The power of his move instantly increased by several times. The power was earth-shattering, and the ground within 30 meters collapsed. Gu Xian's eyes turned cold, and he no longer suppressed his cultivation. His peak-treading immortal cultivation was fully unleashed. Moon sword slashed down, and the cold aura sealed the sky. The sword and halberd clashed again. Neither side retreated a single step, and the situation remained the same. Aolai pulled back his halberd. Suddenly he felt a chill. At the point where the sword and halberd clashed, the cold aura spread out. The halberd actually started to freeze, and it spread all the way to his arm. The sudden change triggered the ferocity in Aolai's heart. His true chi surged, and the ice on his arm was shattered. Guexion's eyes narrowed, and his sword aura changed direction, piercing toward Aolai's heart. The tip of the sword closed in, but Aolai did not dodge. He raised his hand and grabbed the tip of the sword. An ear-piercing friction sound rang out, and the armor on his hand actually showed signs of cracking. Aolai waved his halberd, and the overbearing halberd fell down. Its ferocious power was shocking, and it cut open the cold heaven and earth, landing on the person in front of him. Facing such a desperate battle, Guexion's eyes showed displeasure. His figure flashed, and he pulled out his sword to leave the battle. If it was not a battle of life and death, he could not really take Aolai's life. This kind of battle was really annoying. Seeing Guexion retreat, Aolai took a step forward and instantly stood up. The halberd was overbearing, and its power was as heavy as a mountain. "You don't know your place." Guexion's eyes darkened, and the moon sword in his hand shone brightly. The power of a peerless divine weapon was fully displayed. With a slash of the sword, the frozen void shattered inch by inch. The sword and halberd fell at the same time, and the outcome of the battle was decided. At this moment, King Jueyong on the main seat moved. He took a step forward and instantly arrived between the two. He raised his hands and blocked the halberd. "All right, this battle ends here." King Jueyong glanced at the two and said lightly. Seeing the mountain between them, Guexion's eyes darkened. After a moment, he put away his sword, turned around, and walked back to his seat. In front of King Jueyong, Aolai's expression changed. He had no choice but to put away his halberd and return to his seat. After the two returned to their seats, King Jueyong waved his hand to scatter the shock waves from the battle. Amid rumbling, the collapsed ground closed up and returned to normal. After doing all that, King Jueyong's figure flashed, and he returned to his seat. "My son is obsessed with martial arts." Since he met rare experts like everyone here, he could not help but overestimate himself and challenge them. "I hope that everyone will not take it to heart," King Jueyong said, a smile appearing on his face again. It is true that young Master Jueyong is obsessed with martial arts. However, there is no way to say that he overestimates himself. He lives up to his reputation. "Today, I can see that your city's young master's attainments in the sword are indeed extraordinary," Jean Lin, who sat at the head of the seats, said. "Niece, you praise me too much." King Jueyong smiled faintly and said, "My son's insignificant skills in the sword are not worthy of attention. He is only barely impressive because of his divine weapon." At the end of the seats, Guexion's expression did not change at all when he heard his father's evaluation. He picked up the wine cup in front of him and drank silently. Then, he inadvertently looked at the plain-clothed youth across him. He felt that this person was the true expert. Sensing Guexion's gaze, Ningchen smiled and raised his cup in acknowledgement. Then, he took a sip and put it down. Earlier, Ningchen was uncertain. However, after the battle earlier, he was certain that this young master of Jueyong Royal City was someone who had cleansed himself. If it were an ordinary poor family, it would be understandable for them to cleanse themselves as slaves in order to make a living. However, this young Master Guexion, as the young master of Jueyong Royal City, had cleansed himself as well. This was truly inconceivable. Rumor had it that there were some special cultivation techniques that required special methods to reach the peak. However, these were only rumors in the end. No one had seen them before. If this young master of Jueyong Royal City truly chose to cleanse himself in order to cultivate some cultivation technique, then it was truly incomprehensible. "Brother, how should I address you?" Just at this moment, Guexin asked calmly from across the seats. "Ningchen." Ningchen came back to his senses and replied. Brother Ning seems to have an understanding of the sword that is difficult for ordinary people, Gu Xian said as he looked at the person before him. I do know a thing or two, Ning Chen nodded. Why don't we spar? Gu Xian said seriously. Sure, but, as he spoke, Ning Chen looked towards the main seat and smiled. It doesn't seem possible now. Gu Xian looked at his father on the main seat. After a while, he withdrew his gaze and said calmly, Indeed, it's not possible today. Let's do it another day. There's still some distance to the ancient desolate plains. There will definitely be opportunities. Ning Chen smiled and said, If there's a chance, I will definitely spar with young master. Then it's settled. A rare smile appeared on Gu Xian's slightly feminine face as he nodded. On the main seat, King Jueyong looked at the exchange between the two people at the end of the seats and unconsciously frowned. Gu Xian, if you continue to cause trouble, don't blame your father for being merciless. Your mission is to obtain the Yin Yang non-jade. Before that, your strength cannot be exposed, King Jueyong said in a deep voice. Hearing the voice, Gu Xian's smile grew wider and wider. Coupled with his feminine face, it seemed so chilling. Your son naturally does not dare to disobey father's orders. Gu Xian drank the wine in front of him and said with a brilliant smile, However, these people will all be your son's opponents in the fight for the Yin Yang non-jade. Why don't you kill them all? Chapter 1004. At the king of Jueyong's residence, a banquet lasted from noon until sunset. When the sun set, the banquet dispersed and the young experts left one after another. After the guests left, King of Jueyong looked at his only son who was still drinking silently at the end of the table. His expression turned cold as his figure flashed and appeared before him. Slap. A loud slap landed on Gu Xian's face. King of Jueyong looked at the former and said in a deep voice, You're getting more and more presumptuous. Gu Xian raised his head and looked coldly at the person in front of him. He raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Without saying a word, he turned and left. Looking at the former's departing figure, King of Jueyong clenched his fists tightly. The coldness in his eyes was bone-chilling. Outside Jueyong Ancient City, Ning Chen continued forward with the two girls. The bright moon rose in the sky and the moonlight shone down. The beautiful night made people feel relaxed and happy. Xiaji skipped in front and led the way. She seemed to be in a good mood. Dong Yu reminded her from time to time. However, Xiaji only gave a perfunctory reply and continued to entertain herself. Ning Chen followed behind with a gentle smile on his face. He didn't care about the two girls. As he walked, he quietly thought about something. Young master, will the young master of the rock clan follow us? Dong Yu was a little worried and asked. Yes. Ning Chen smiled and nodded. This person will take revenge for the smallest grievance. It's impossible for him to let it go. I think he should be behind us. When we're a sufficient distance away from Jueyong Ancient City, he will attack. Young master, aren't you worried at all? Dong Yu asked seriously. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. Ning Chen smiled and said, Besides, it's still unknown who's on the chopping block and who's on the fish. Hearing the former's words, Dong Yu was still worried. She looked behind from time to time, on guard against the young master of the rock clan who could appear at any time. Under the night sky, the three of them continued forward. The bright moon moved west and the weather was getting colder and colder. However, the three of them were martial experts and didn't have much effect. When the moon was in the middle of the sky, Ning Chen stopped and turned around. He said calmly, Brother, aren't you tired after following us for so long? Show yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, Dong Yu and Summer Solstice were startled. They looked back with a trace of nervousness on their faces. So you've already noticed me. As he spoke, a figure shrouded in killing intent walked over from the distant night. He held a halberd in his hand, and his eyes were cold like ice. Summer solstice, winter rain, step back. Ning Chen said as he looked at the approaching figure. N. Hearing this, Dong Yu nodded, pulled summer solstice, and quickly withdrew from the battlefield. The two women retreated. In the battle, The two faced each other, and the atmosphere became abnormally heavy. A cold wind blew past, and a sandstorm rose up. In an instant, Ao Lai's head appeared, and the desolate halberd broke through the air, dominating the world. Ningchen put his fingers together and blocked the halberd with a loud clang. His feet trembled as he dispelled the tremendous force. With a rumbling sound, the earth cracked open, and the cracks continued to spread out, reaching hundreds of li away. It was a simple move, but its power was shocking. Knowing that the person in front of him was powerful, Ao Lai did not hold back anymore. He released all of his power, and suddenly, the sky rock evil image appeared. It flapped its wings, and the wind was like a blade, tearing the surrounding space apart. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed as he executed a strange footwork. His figure flashed in the wind as he dodged one wind blade after another. Rip! The sound of clothes tearing rang out. A wind blade sliced across Ning Chen's arm, tearing his clothes apart. Ning Chen frowned slightly. His figure flashed, and he left the battlefield. He waved his right hand, and a black light spread out. In the black light, a long and narrow black blade appeared. In an instant, an astonishing baleful aura filled the air, and its ferocious might shook the sky. Kuang Gu reappeared, and the murderous weapon refined from the bones of ancient ferocious beasts shone brightly. In an instant, the black blade slashed down, and the wind collapsed. Ning Chen's figure moved again, and in an instant, the black blade slashed down, and his killing intent filled the sky. Ao Lai's halberd met the attack. In an ear-piercing collision, the wind and clouds gathered above the two. The powerful aura could not be withstood by the heaven and earth. The entire sky split apart, and the scene was extremely shocking. In the blink of an eye, they exchanged several moves. The sky rock evil image was extremely fast, and each move was fast and fierce. Facing the storm of attacks, Ning Chen's expression gradually turned serious. In the shocking battle, both sides did not show any mercy, and each move was to kill, chasing after the soul. After 10 moves, Ao Lai's expression turned even more serious. He shouted, and the sky rock evil image opened its huge mouth. Suddenly, a terrifying suction force spread out, as if it wanted to swallow the opponent in front of it. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He flipped his palm, and the cold air spread out. In the wind and snow, several huge stars appeared, and the god's scroll appeared again. The surrounding sky instantly sank. God's sky dance. With a move that shook the heavens, a meteor fell to the mortal world. Under the stars, her white clothes fluttered, as if she was a god dancing among the stars. With a move that shook the heavens, the situation of the battle changed. The stars descended, and the sky rock devoured the sky. The two moves collided, and a terrifying vibration shook the entire wasteland. The violent aftershock continued to spread out, destroying everything within 1,000 miles. Outside the battle, Dong Yu and Summer Solstice were shocked. They immediately retreated dozens of miles to avoid the aftershock of the battle. In the center of the battle, sand filled the air. The two moves clashed, and the winner was obvious. Ao Lai spat out blood from his mouth, and he retreated a few steps. After gaining the upper hand with one move, Ning Chen did not stop. He took a step forward and rushed forward again. Wild bones split the air, and a merciless blade came for his life. Under the blade light, Ao Lai barely managed to stabilize his body. He raised his left hand and grabbed Wild Bone's blade. Caught you! The sky rock's claws were indestructible. Ao Lai stopped the weapon in front of him, and his right hand let go of the halberd. He condensed his energy into a claw and tore at Ning Chen's chest. The move sky split was indestructible. A deep black gully appeared in the space between the two. The killing move arrived instantly, and the yellow springs opened the way. When the claw arrived, Ning Chen did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. A cold light flashed in the corner of his mouth. He let go of the blade, and as their bodies crossed, his heavy fist condensed into frost and landed on Ao Lai's chest. Ugh! With a muffled groan, Ao Lai's figure flew out 100 feet. He stomped his foot and stopped his retreat. 100 feet away, Ning Chen looked at the rock young master in front of him. He clenched his right hand, and Wild Bone flew back to him. The skyrock speed is just SOSO. Killing intent appeared in Ning Chen's eyes for the first time. The person in front of him was a disaster. He had to get rid of him as soon as possible to avoid trouble in the future. Thinking of this, Ning Chen took a step forward. A stream of light flashed, and the battle started again. The blade light covered the eyes, and the battle technique changed abruptly. In the blink of an eye, Ning Chen's body was engulfed by wind and snow. Aolai saw this, and his expression changed slightly. His figure flashed, wanting to avoid the blade light. "You can't retreat." Ning Chen snorted coldly. The blade in his hand pierced the ground. Suddenly, the ground turned over, and blade light broke through the sky, cutting off the former's retreat. Aolai's figure kept moving in the blade light that soared into the sky. He waved his halberd and cut down the blade light one after another. Ning Chen's body moved, and the blade light was extremely sharp. A move that he had never used before appeared for the first time in the primordial demon realm, killing a strong enemy. Through the ages, it will be the only one in 100 generations. A blade in spring and autumn, a beauty that can topple cities. The butterfly martial arts, a legend of the blade. It was the pinnacle of the technique. It cut open heaven and earth. Wild Bone hummed, and it quickly absorbed the blade light between heaven and earth. In the next moment, Wild Bone slashed the sky, and a blade that could topple cities. The blade light fell, and within 1,000 miles, it was like the end of the world. The sky was destroyed, the city was toppled, and the mountains and rivers were shattered. In the wind and rain, Aolai's pupils shrank fiercely. He forcefully activated his body, and the heavenly rock evil image roared to the sky, and merged into his body. The halberd broke through the sky, and 100 feet long halberd light pierced through heaven and earth. It met the blade light that was slashing down from the sky. The blade and halberd's final move collided. After a short silence, a terrifying aftershock exploded. In the aftershock that could destroy heaven and earth, 1,000 miles instantly collapsed. A painful groan sounded. The heavenly rock's wings were broken, and Aolai's figure flew out a few hundred feet before crashing into the ground. In the violent sand, a white-clothed figure walked out. He stepped forward, and the black blade in his hand did not stop even because of the outcome of the battle. If you cut the grass without removing the roots, it will grow again when the spring breeze blows. He understood this simple principle better than anyone else. He took a step forward, and his figure arrived in front of Aolai in an instant. Ning Chen's Wild Bone slashed down, and it went through Aolai's throat. At this moment, on the ground, the severely injured and dying Aolai suddenly opened his eyes. A terrifying power that surpassed the treading immortal realm burst out, shocking the wind and clouds. Seeing this, Ning Chen's figure quickly retreated, and in an instant he was 1,000 feet away. Looking at the figure standing up in front of him, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. This was not the aura of the young master of the Rock Clan. The difference was too great. Young man, when it's possible to make mistakes, one should forgive them. Aolai opened his mouth, and an old voice came out, saying lightly, "You are the Rock King?" Ning Chen looked at the person in front of him and said in a deep voice, "The juniors nowadays are really amazing." The Rock King's face was filled with emotion. He raised his right hand, and in an instant, the wind and clouds changed color. A terrifying pressure descended, tearing the void apart. With the arrival of danger, Ning Chen did not hesitate and immediately retreated 1,000 feet. He did not take it head-on. Failing to kill the young man in front of him, the Rock King's eyes flashed with regret. He said, "Young man, that's all for today. See you again." As he spoke, the heavenly rock spread its wings, and a huge evil image carried the young master of the Rock Clan and soared into the sky. Seeing the former leave, Ning Chen's expression darkened. He still let him escape. He did not expect that Aolai's body would have part of the Rock King's power. This Rock King really put in a lot of effort. It seemed that he and the young master of the Rock Clan were destined to meet again. "Young master." After the battle ended, Dong Yu and Xia Ji rushed over. Their faces were filled with worry. "I'm fine. Let's continue on our way. Ningchen smiled and replied, then he continued to walk forward. Young master, what happened just now? Xiaji quickly walked a few steps to catch up and asked in confusion. The young one couldn't beat the old one, so the old one came out. The aura just now should be the Rock King. Ningchen said with a smile. The Rock King? Xiaji was shocked when she heard this. The Rock King who was almost comparable to a ruler? That's young master. Xiaji came back to her senses and said in disbelief, Young master. You want to ask why he didn't kill me, right? Ningchen looked at the woman beside him and asked. Xiaji nodded. The Rock King's strength was well known in the world. Even compared to a ruler, he was very terrifying. He does want to kill me, but he can't do it now. Ningchen looked into the distance and said with a solemn expression, everyone's body has a limit. The Rock King can't have left too much power in Ao Lai's body. Otherwise, before he can kill the enemy, Ao Lai's body might explode because it can't withstand this power. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.